You may begin.
I now call the regular city council and special successor agency meetings to order at 9:04. Can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Chair Lopez,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Larios.
Here.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlot,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra. You have a quorum.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have any changes to the agendas?
There are none.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agendas?
I'll move Ibarra. I'll second Larios.
Motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Larios to approve the agenda. I'll call the roll. Mayor Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Larios,
Yes.
Member Davis,
Yes.
Member Merlot,
Yes.
Member Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We will now take public comments for the city council and successor agency. If you would like to provide public comment, please come to the podium or click the raise hand button in Zoom.
Mayor, if I could just clarify, this is for items not listed on the agenda. So those of you wanting to speak on item 3 or 28, we'll wait till those items come before the bodies. This is for any items not on the agenda.
Thank you. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to speak?
I'll just give everybody just a moment. So far, we have no raised hands.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I see no speakers.
Okay. We will now recess the city council meeting to consider the successor agency agenda item. We will now go to the successor agency consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar may be approved with one motion. Items may be removed from the consent calendar by any member. Those items removed will be considered immediately after the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to pull any items from the successor agency consent calendar?
No. No.
Are there any public comments on the consent calendar or any public comments on Zoom?
There are no raised hands.
May I have a motion for consent calendar item numbers 1 and 2?
I'll move Ibarra.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Ibarra, motion by Member Ibarra, seconded by Member Davis to approve the successor agency consent calendar. I'll call the roll. Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Larios,
Yes.
Member Davis,
Yes.
Member Merlot,
Yes.
Member Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We will now go on to the oral reports. Are there any reports from the members or staff?
There are none.
With no further business, I adjourn the successor agency meeting at 9:08 and reconvene the city council meeting. We will now go on to presentations. Agenda item number 1 are the Employee Service Pin Awards for May 2022. Human Resources Director Earl will present this item.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. During the month of May, we had 5 employees achieve service milestones with the city. I believe we have one of those people present this morning. We'd like to recognize Fernando Flores for 25 years of service to the city. Fernando, if you want to come up. Fernando was hired as a utility man. Fernando was hired as a utility man 4 in the Public Works Department on May 25th, 1997. Since that time, he's been promoted to the positions of utility man 3, field crew, systems coordinator 1, and electric dispatcher. He currently holds the position of utilities dispatcher, a position he's held since April 20th of 2014. Please join me in congratulating Fernando Flores on 25 years of service.
Mayor, we can go on to item number 2.
Yes, agenda item number 2 is a proclamation recognizing retired employee Renan Castro. City Clerk Pope will present the item.
Good
Is
morning,
Mr.
Mayor. Actually, Mayor Pro Tem Larios will read the proclamation, and I believe Mr. Castro is not yet with us.
He was going to attend via Zoom. Is he not logged in?
No, he hasn't joined as a panelist or an attendee.
Do you want to defer till later?
Yeah.
We'll hold off on this item until a little bit later in the meeting and see if we can get him to join the meeting.
And if he's not
Okay.
able to attend, then we can make sure that he gets the proclamation.
That sounds good. Thank you. We will now go on to agenda item number 3. It's the West Side Specific Plan Study Session. Public Works Director Wall will present this item.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Just over 2 years ago, the City Council approved advertising an RFP. This was the first step in the process of developing the West Side Specific Plan. Since that time, city staff and the city's consultant team have been meeting with stakeholders to understand their needs and desires for the West Side. During this time, we have also been conducting studies to help refine the vision that will meet those needs and desires. The purpose of today's study session is to go over our work to date and check in with the council to ensure that we're on the right track. I will now hand this over to Deputy Director Manuel Garcia for historical context.
Good morning, Mayor, councilors, city administrator, department heads, staff, members of the general public, both here and remote. If I could have that presentation. So how did I become the historian? So Hugh Hauser did a tour of the power plant, and I was a docent. And working at the power plant, you come across a lot of the records and you find out, what happened in the city of Vernon. One of the interesting, I've read 2 interesting records, log entries. One was the when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and when Kennedy died. So that kind of gives you like a perspective. Next slide, please. Perfect. The city of Vernon was founded in 1905. And at the time, it was pretty much just farmland. 1920s saw the establishment of an exclusively industrial zone and a transition from farming to industry. But industry runs on power. So in 1933, the Vernon Power Plant came into existence, in operation. And that was a bold move. If you see a picture of that time, you see the power plant surrounded by farm. That was an interesting sight. A bold move, a visionary move. At the same time, Bethlehem Steel moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. And the decision to build that power plant was a vision of the industrial aspect of the city of Vernon, and industry runs on power. For the next 50 years, Vernon was pretty much exclusively industrial, inclusively industrial. And basically, companies like Bethlehem Steel, Alcoa, Norris Industries thrived primarily because of World War II and the need for steel. 1980s, Bethlehem Steel closed. And that was like interesting. Wow, Bethlehem Steel's no longer in the city of Vernon. I remember as a teenager riding my bike adjacent to the mill on Slauson Avenue and feeling the heat from the furnace. And you could see the number of people working there, and you could actually see the molten steel as it was being processed. At the same time, Edison changed its rate structure to a time of use. And the little city of Vernon took on Edison an antitrust lawsuit and ended up not winning, but it was settled favorably for the city of Vernon. And the message was clear. The city is here to provide a competitive advantage to the business community. And when Edison said, here's the rate, Edison said, we're using anti-competitive practices, and we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that our businesses have that competitive advantage. And at the time, it was about power rates. The power plant, the Vernon power plant, had been mothballed for a couple of decades. And the city basically said, you're going to charge us for an on-peak rate? Well, we're going to put the power plant on. And that created a kind of like a movement towards the power independence aspect. 1997. You see that same theme with the Marlboro generating station coming online and just maintaining that competitive advantage. And now we get to today. We're in 2022, and now we hear things like Farmer John is no longer going to be in Vernon, operating in Vernon. So what is the constant? Change. What is also the constant is the adaptation and the boldness of the city of Vernon in creating that positive work business environment. And what is the next bold move? What is the future of Vernon? And that's what this presentation is going to cover. Now I'm going to turn it over to Phil Burns from the Arroyo Group.
Thank you so much, Manny. And Dan, if you'd like to say another couple of words before I begin, that'd be fine. So, okay, wonderful. So Mayor Lopez, guess can't see you there, but and council members, a great pleasure to be with you this morning as we present our work to date on the West Side specific plan and are extremely interested in receiving your feedback on the work to date, on the direction of the plan, as Public Works Director Wall expressed in the beginning here. As a reminder, you all set forth a vision. You all set forth a direction when you decided to pursue a West Side specific plan, to hire a consultant, to hire us, to prepare this West Side specific plan on behalf of the city, to prepare a long-term plan. As Manny said, looking at what is the future of Vernon? What will it be in the next 30 years? And particularly within the West Side area, which is the portion of our community that needs the most help and which also has a great deal of opportunity. How to maintain the city's competitive advantage, how to create a more prosperous, diversified, resilient economy, and how to respond to long-term economic and governance threats that the city has confronted in the past. And so, so today I would like to basically give you this report on where we are, receive your feedback. I'd like to kind of contextualize where we are by looking at the different components of a specific plan, tell you what we have prepared at this point, which is for your review, and what is yet to come. So we talk about three different aspects of a specific plan, the first being a vision. And the vision is the most important portion of the specific plan because that is what drives the other portions of the plan. However, the vision itself is not regulatory. So today we're going to be presenting the vision that we have kind of fleshed out based on that initial direction and push that you all gave us at the beginning of the project for your review. And after we conduct this study session, we will be moving on to preparing the second and third portions of the specific plan, which are the regulation, the zoning regulations, which will come into effect the day that the specific plan is adopted. Again, that's not today, right? But in the future, when the plan is actually adopted with the environmental impact report. And then those zoning regulations will go into effect, governing private development from that point on forward. And then also the implementation strategy, which we've had a good deal of conversation about with the stakeholders committee, and which consists of actions that are recommended for the city to undertake. So at the point that the specific plan is adopted, these implementation actions such as public works projects, development of public land, et cetera, those things will be placed on the staff's work program and will, staff will begin to work on those things to refine them. However, it's very important to note that in adopting the specific plan, the actual implementation actions themselves are not receiving their final approval, right? Staff will work on them, they will refine them, they will consider them in the context of, continuing change that goes on. And at some point in the future, the council will have the opportunity to make a final decision about whether to move ahead on the various implementation items that are recommended. So we worked very closely with the Stakeholders Advisory Committee, and will continue to work with them through the remainder of the process. We shared and came up with together a list of 6 goals for the specific plan, which kind of drive the direction. And they are to reinvigorate the city's competitive advantage as a center of production. Secondly, to strengthen and provide long-term stability to the city's fiscal position. Third, to increase the residential population. Fourth, to diversify the West Side's land uses to take advantage of the economic landscape and economic opportunities of today. Fifth, to increase amenities that are available to the local resident population and to the workers that are today in Vernon. And then sixth, to create a physical environment that is supportive of all of these changes and actually gives a more positive identity to Vernon for the region. Now, of those 6 goals, one that has generated a lot of discussion is the goal to increase the residential population. And particularly, even though we have heard that there is broad agreement on the need to increase the residential population of the city, thinking about how to do that. So in the past, the city has zoned, certain portions, certain parcels around the edge of the city for development and pursued affordable housing development. That's what we saw in Vernon Village. But the West Side strategy is a little bit different, right? The West Side strategy of increasing the residential population through mixed use, largely market rate housing, mixed use housing that's integrated with light industry, that's integrated with retail, that's integrated with office and other uses in specific clusters in the West Side area. And so we think that this strategy has multiple benefits for the city. One is that the sort of targeted population consists of singles, childless couples, other non-family households that are seeking to live close to downtown, close to the arts district, and they're the ones that are kind of driving the residential market in areas that are close to here currently. And these types of folks are the ones that are more likely to actually start and be involved in small and medium scale businesses themselves, creative businesses, small scale production businesses, and those kinds of things. And they often seek an environment where they can live and work in the same place or in close proximity. This is also the population that will probably stimulate the greatest demand for new restaurants and local retail businesses that would serve, of course, not just them, but the broader Vernon community. In being largely market rate, could help these projects pencil out and be feasible. And then one, final thing that kind of guided the strategy with this is to understand that in order to attract residents, because if it's not going to be a majority of affordable housing, in order to attract residents to live in this area, we also have to create the supportive environment for them to do that, right? So we have to have the retail, we have to have the urban open spaces, we have to have some of the things that make it a good place to live, where people voluntarily choose to live in Vernon. And so this kind of direction has guided the build out of we call the vision, which is looking at those goals and your direction and placing them on the map and saying, what is the physical strategy for the West Side? So the first element, and probably the most important in the vision, is that the vast majority of the West Side should be preserved for the current industrial uses. It is really within a couple of defined and focused clusters in the West Side, clusters that have buildings that are remnants of Vernon's historical past, buildings that may be beautiful, that may have great value as creative office locations, as live work spaces. But what they do not have is a lot of value for today's industrial economy that's highly dependent upon trucking. And so taking the areas that have those kinds of buildings and really targeting those areas for providing additional flexibility for property owners to diversify land uses, bring in different land uses into those areas. South Santa Fe cluster is one. And then the second one is kind of right around here in City Hall and extending up along Santa Fe on the north. So these two clusters are, of course, linked by Santa Fe Avenue itself. And one thing that, as we were speaking with the Stakeholders Advisory Committee about this idea, and though they agreed that these were the primary areas in which it would make sense to have a more diversified land use strategy, they also recognized that it was going to be very important to be able to improve the street environment for some of these uses to come in, and particularly to address the high volume of heavy truck traffic that today exists on Santa Fe Avenue. And so the third element of the vision is really to divert trucks, except for the ones that have essential need to use Santa Fe Avenue, from Santa Fe Avenue, and strengthen that street as a walkable main street that is suitable for all of these different uses to come into the street. As we do that, then we also have a responsibility to our business owners in the West Side that power the economy today to give them access that is comparable, if not better, than the access that they have today. And so the fourth element of the strategy is really to create a much more functional truck corridor, Vernon truck corridor along Alameda East, and also strengthen truck movement on other streets in the West Side and the city. So as we look at those, at that kind of direction, you can see we looked at several specific sites within the West Side that we think are good action opportunities. They're not the only opportunities for development there, but a wide mix of uses, including, again, retail-oriented uses, office-oriented uses, what we call production retail, which are businesses that involve manufacturing in the back and sales in the front, and then live, work, and residential, multifamily residential as well. New build and adaptive reuse opportunities. So what could this look like in the future for Vernon? Here we see the South Santa Fe cluster, Santa Fe at 52nd Street today. And here is what it could look like in the future with implementation of the plan. Imagine that building, that large 3-story building there on the right side. It doesn't show, okay. On the kind of in the rear on the right side there, that's a beautiful building with high ceilings, lots of natural light, views of downtown. Imagine the ground floor of that building being modified into production retail businesses. Perhaps you have a coffee roaster in the back and a coffee shop in the front, bringing people into this area. Upper floors of the building being adaptively reused into live work uses. The rooftop may be used as a restaurant, additional restaurants and outdoor dining, as you see over there on the right-hand side of the image. New construction development as well, new mixed use that can be a part of this environment as well. And then a street environment that is much calmer than what we have today, much more walkable, on-street parking to serve the businesses that are right along Santa Fe, additional shade and a much more hospitable environment for these uses to exist and for the community in general to be. Secondly, let's look at what this area could be, the Civic Center. in the future. Again, this is a long-range plan, but let's envision what that could feel like. Really being the core or the center of Vernon, having an authentic city center and an authentic gathering place, a meeting place for folks in the city. Imagine that as residents, you have the opportunity to invite people to come visit you in Vernon, and you say, let's go meet right out here at the plaza. The plaza, as beautiful as it is right now, reimagined to be more of a place for people, a place where you can meet, ringed with, again, the restaurants, the coffee shops, also some of the daily services that might be needed, the banks, the print shops for the City of Vernon business community could be served in this area. Connected back that way through an open passageway toward the toward this Petrelli site here, which could be redeveloped with a housing development that again brings in the people that are needed to power the retail demand that would be accommodated in this area. Connected with a nice streetscape along the front here in Santa Fe, and then catty corner over there on the southeast corner of Santa Fe and Pacific, that very large brick building you see here also envisioned as being changed into, perhaps it's a building that has a market inside, perhaps it also has restaurants or food, perhaps it has other kind of shops or evening time uses as well that make Vernon more of a destination in the evening, bring people into the city at a time when generally today it's very quiet. And so imagine that as the center of the city for the Civic Center area. So as we, I guess nice renderings and vision is all well and good, but the question is, can this actually work? Is there actually interest in having some of these projects done? So we have worked closely with property owners, the two properties in particular that I just showed to you in South Santa Fe and catty corner from this area. And the property owners there have expressed a significant amount of interest in pursuing redevelopment of this type. We've also undertaken feasibility analyses, physical feasibility, parking analysis, and financial feasibility to see whether these projects can work. And we feel confident that they can work in Vernon. And I think maybe one of the proof of the pudding of that is that recently the city received a kind of out of the blue proposal for a housing development on 28th Street in Santa Fe, a mixed use housing development to be constructed there. Now, while the West Side specific plan hasn't specifically contemplated this development and whether this location and design and all of that is actually something that we want to allow or encourage within the specific plan, I think that the broader point is made, right? There is development interest. There are people that are willing to make the investment, to risk the investment to bring in these types of uses into the city of Vernon. So as we look around these opportunity sites and districts nearby, and we plan for, again, this 30-year horizon for the specific plan area, we could see how residential units could be distributed across these clusters, again, all linked together through Santa Fe Avenue for a total of about 874 new residential units to come online. Okay, so that is the vision portion. That is the most important portion that we want to receive your feedback on today. I'm going to cover as well the regulation and the implementation portions briefly. The regulation, as I mentioned, we have not yet built out, and we will build it out based on direction from staff and your feedback today. The regulations will be zoning regulations. They're going to govern all private development, which happen after the adoption of the plan on forward. That'll include a zoning map. It'll say exactly which properties would have the additional land use flexibility or different land use standards. Issues such as, what kinds of mixes of uses would be required, what the maximum height of structures would be, what kind of incentives can be offered to developers to encourage them to retain historic or older structures. Parking requirements, how to right size those parking requirements so that they don't remain the barrier to retail commercial use that they have been in the past in the city of Vernon, yet also provide sufficient supply to accommodate the uses, and taking advantage of on-street parking, which we would propose to have along Santa Fe Avenue as part of that mix. Environmental standards as well to deal with, how if residential uses and industrial uses are moving into closer proximity, how do we ensure the continued viability and security of both of those uses and health of both of those uses vis-a-vis each other without harming the business community that's existing. And then third, I want to go over here the implementation strategies. So again, these are projects which would be affirmed in the strategy as part of the specific plan, but not your final approval. Plenty of work still ahead on all of these implementation items to refine them, to make sure that they can meet all of the needs of the community as well as any technical needs that come up in a further design process. So because I'm going to describe 3 implementation strategies today. The first is turning Alameda East into a Vernon truck corridor. The second is making Santa Fe more of a Main Street kind of environment. And then the third one is redevelopment of the Civic Center and Petrelli property. Number 1 and number 2 obviously have a lot to deal with transportation and traffic analysis. So here with us today, and we'll just briefly introduce my team as well, but here with us today is our traffic engineer, Deepak Kaushik from Itiris, who's here to answer any questions, as well as Bob Paternoster and Lance Lowry from the Arroyo Group. And we have a couple other consultants who are on Zoom as well. So Deepak can speak more in depth about the traffic analysis that went into this, but I do want to point out that the traffic analysis that has been done has been a very robust analysis for a specific plan and has used kind of the most up-to-date data sources, including cell phone data, anonymized cell phone data, to understand traffic patterns in this area for cars, for trucks, and how we can really craft a strategy that can be effective at kind of fulfilling the vision that I mentioned before. The 3 steps of the strategy were first, understanding existing conditions, which I just mentioned. Secondly, taking a regional traffic model to model if we make all of these changes to the circulation system that I've discussed, then how would traffic flows change? And then third, to test the intersections. What would your experience at a driver be with those changed traffic flows? How much more delay would you encounter, right, at intersections, for example? So let's talk about the first project, which is the Vernon Truck Corridor. And again, the point of this is to be able to serve the west side businesses here with an excellent truck access route along what today we refer to as Alameda East. Alameda East actually was established in the early 90s to be a priority access route for trucks entering the city. However, it's never fulfilled its promise. And I'm sure all of you understand the reason why it hasn't fulfilled that promise from driving on it. That is because there simply is not enough green light time. There's not enough green time along Alameda East for cars and trucks to get through the light, right? When cars and trucks are moving north and south along Alameda, you have a red light on Alameda East. and vice versa. And so what is the solution to this? The solution to be able to have a lot more capacity along Alameda East is basically to allow those two movements to go together, those two parallel roadways to move at the same time, north and south. And that requires some signaling changes. That requires some modest intersection improvements and turning changes to make sure that, you know, cars would not hit each other going across the two roadways. Another thing that we learned from the traffic model was that if there is a diversion of many trucks from Santa Fe, this street, Alameda East, would need to carry quite a few more vehicles than it does today. We need to cover roughly double, from 4,500 vehicles a day up to about 8,500 vehicles a day. So, and here are some of the geometric changes that would be required. And certainly we can speak to this in a lot more detail if you have questions. But what's the kind of result of this analysis? Well, the result of the analysis is actually that because you have so much more time with a green light to move north and south on the Vernon truck corridor, even though you're doubling the amount of traffic that would need to use that street, delay will actually decrease and may actually decrease significantly, as you can see over here within the red box. So the the direction that we've received and the recommendation that we've received from the staff is to try to implement this project as soon as possible, be able to prove out that the truck corridor is indeed a viable means of access for the businesses today along the west side to be able to get in and out of where they need to go, and then move on to project number 2, which is to transform Santa Fe in a way that it becomes more like the main street that it was historically for the city, a more pedestrian-friendly environment that's more hospitable to retail, to restaurant, to live work, to residential, all of those kinds of uses. And so there's 2 different solutions along the southern portion of Santa Fe. Our traffic model showed that the southern portion of Santa Fe could be narrowed from 2 lanes in each direction with a center turn lane down to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane. This would cause a decrease in vehicular volume along the street by about 10,000 cars a day, but largely those cars would all move onto Pacific Boulevard. Why? Because we found out that the vast majority of cars that are traveling on Santa Fe today are actually not headed to Vernon, they're headed south of here. And so if they can use Santa Fe, well, many of them can also use Pacific as well. Trucks under the proposed changes would decrease by a great amount, almost 90% decrease of trucks along Santa Fe. And what you have instead of that, as we look at this again, is that you now have room for on-street parking along the street, for shortened pedestrian crossings. You have a quieter environment that allows for outdoor dining to happen. You can have bike access through bike lanes. You can have street trees that provide a lot of shade to the area. Looking at Santa Fe north of Vernon Avenue, Pacific, here, a little bit different traffic characteristics. So the traffic model showed that really vehicular traffic could not be diverted from this portion of the street, although truck volumes would decrease greatly, of course, with the diversion. And so what that means is that this portion of the street could also be modified to eliminate the central exchange lane and add on-street parking on both sides of the street, as well as tree wells to allow for the planting of large street trees, which would again, create a more comfortable environment along the street. What are the effects of making that change on traffic movement in the area? Well, we see that, of course, there is a reduction in lanes on Santa Fe South, so you would anticipate that there would be an increase in traffic delay, and indeed there is, but we think that the magnitude of it is actually quite small. When you kind of trade off the added benefit of having so many services much closer here in the city of Vernon, the added 7 to 8 seconds in the morning and 19 seconds in the afternoon rush hour seem like they're a worthwhile trade-off. Finally, the third implementation project, which would be the redevelopment of Civic Center, including the adjacent Petrelli property. Here you saw this kind of, concept of what it could look like again here. And we know that, the level of development on the rear portion of the site is definitely an issue that warrants further study. It is not something that necessarily has to be settled at this point, at the time of the West Side specific plan and the adoption of the specific plan. However, our team did study multiple scenarios here in terms of how many units to bring into this area, but really the key determining factor is the Surplus Land Act, which was passed by the state in 2019, which requires that any site that is city-owned and is offered up for development must be offered first for 100% affordable housing, unless it is a site that accommodates over 300 units and is mixed use in nature. And therefore, the plan at this point has rendered a development of over 300 units here at this site. One thing I do want to mention about, what that might mean in terms of traffic impact to the area. You see some of the traffic statistics there. And again, Deepak can answer more questions about all of this, but one real big advantage actually of redeveloping the Petrelli site is that the developer would probably be obligated, or could be certainly be obligated by the plan, to build a new signal light along Vernon Avenue, giving access into and out of the development. And as you do that, though, you can also make that signal accommodate the buildings that are on the south side of Vernon, the homes that are there. You can also make that signal into a pair, accommodate ins and outs of Furlong Place as well. So potentially the traffic kind of issue for residents and those who are right here in this area could actually be better than it is today with implementation of the project. So with that, I'll conclude my portion of the presentation, and I will hand it back to Dan to finish off.
So just like the power plant was critical in Vernon's evolution from being a city of farms to being a city of factories, the West Side specific plan will be critical in Vernon's next evolution to becoming a reinvigorated center of production with an increased residential population and diversified development. This concludes the presentation, and at this point in the workshop, we welcome any comments or discussion.
Mayor, we do have a speaker in someone in the audience who would like to address the council on this item.
Okay.
Steve Freed.
Good morning, Mayor Lopez and City Council members. Happy to be here today. This West Side project, I've been involved in many of the planning sessions. We appreciate that the city has allowed us to business owners and tenants and people doing business in the city to participate in this program. It's been very informative. I think it's something, a lot of what they're proposing would be a godsend for Vernon. But it doesn't, the time frame to do something like this project doesn't answer the immediate need the city has to increase voter rolls. It is a priority We need more voters in this city. If somebody's willing to go to Santa Fe and 28th using their own money to build 150 units, and if it doesn't impact the business community negatively, then we should be rolling out the red carpet for them. It won't involve the city or the city expenses. It won't be a drain on our budget, and it's the fastest way to bring people in. Also, if that doesn't pan out, I think the development program for the City Hall area that they are proposing is excellent, but they need to get we can't wait another 4 or 5 years to break ground on something like this. We need to find a way to hurry this up and get it done. We need to increase our voter rolls. Thank you.
We have additional speakers. Marisa Ogin.
Hi, good morning, Mayor and Council. Good to see you finally. Yes, the Chamber has been involved on the stakeholder committee along with other residents here. And it's been a very substantive conversation and great to work with the Arroyo Group. We agree that the first priority should be to streamline the Alameda East Street. I think that is an easy fix. It seems like there's a lot of consensus with the group to do that right away. In our opinion, we feel that that should be analyzed, the traffic patterns after for a length of time before any action on the Santa Fe change to a 1 lane. Right now, there's a lot of, the Chamber has some hesitancy over moving that to 1 lane right now, especially as what Steve said in talking about some of the priorities that we have. And obviously, we're going to talk about other priorities with the city. But in looking at the number 1 and number 2 of the goals is number 1 is to reinvigorate the city's competitive advantage as a center of production. That's what the stakeholder agreed is the number 1 priority. Number 2 is to ensure that Vernon is financially sustainable. And that includes making sure the city's customer base is strong. So those are our 2 guiding principles that are very important. So if we can ensure goods movement is strong and streamlined along Alameda, then we evaluate the patterns for Santa Fe, something like that. And of course, looking at the development and all the timing that's involved in all that, we need to be very thoughtful in this plan. So those are the Chamber's comments and kind of reiterating some of the stakeholder feedback on the committee, just for your reference. Thanks.
Eric Gustafson. Are there any attendees on Zoom with raised hands?
Yes, we have one, a Jack Klein. I'm going to go ahead and allow him to speak. Jack Klein, go ahead, unmute your mic.
Okay, thank you. This is Jack Klein, Mayor Lopez and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity. Reinforcing what Mariska and Steve Freed said, the balance of the plan where we're reducing vehicular traffic to an area that we want to, this is the discussion on Santa Fe, where we're reducing the car count by 10,000 under the plan of street side parking and narrowing the drive. Reducing the vehicular traffic when we're trying to establish an area for amenities for the folks within Vernon and the future residents, which the count's in the hundreds, not in the thousands, seems to be a stretch and counterintuitive, at least to me. I think the following the priorities of the group that collected, that the Arroyo Group collected, seems to be very consistent and actually fairly simple to do without potentially having a major impact. One other thing that I'd like to mention is, as the Arroyo speaker had mentioned, that the unfulfilled promises of the past, I think that it would be very important that the city council take into consideration all of the specific plans that were mentioned earlier in the presentation and tour those plans and get a timeline from the time those plans have been adopted and what substantive improvements that were along the lines of the goals of those specific plans. We are seeing constantly unintended consequences of what are well-intended ideas and goals having significant negative impacts on the people that they're hoping to help. So I think that would be the one, chase those low-hanging fruit that you have that would absolutely bring some of the priorities of both the community group and, as stated earlier in the presentation, and two, before adopting a specific plan, really see what are the results of all these other specific plans around the city, and did they really provide for the goals that were targeted versus the impacts, the negative consequences of the community. Thank you very much.
And we have another raised hand from Juliet Goff.
Juliet Goff is on Zoom. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Mayor Lopez, Council, everyone in the audience there. I'm happy to participate today. I was on the committee as well, and I want to compliment the Arroyo Group for being so inclusive and giving us chances to speak one-on-one with them with our thoughts. All I want to do is sort of piggyback on what others have just said, and to use Jack's term, the low-hanging fruit is definitely do Alameda, fix that, and let's see what that looks like. I think that'll go a long way on getting people to go along with more change if they can see that really works. And we do need to increase our voter pool, and we also need to increase the people that are eligible to be considered for council. Those are things that are very important. The thing I would like to know, and I haven't seen yet, is since it's very clearly stated what the goals are in terms of the reinvigorating our competitive advantage for center of production and strengthening the long-term fiscal stability of the city. Those are number one and number two. So I would like to see numbers, dollars, projections on how these changes are going to achieve those goals. Like if unfortunately, we've lost Farmer John, or we're losing Farmer John, we know what that parcel generates in terms of revenue to the city on a square foot basis. How are we going to replace that? So if we put in new uses, what kind of revenue is it going to generate to the city? What are we going to lose? When we increase our population, we all know that we are a donor city when it comes to the property tax revenue, how none of it really comes back to us. How much more are we going to get back at each increase in our population? Let's just understand the numbers before we make big decisions. But I highly recommend that we move forward on the traffic on Alameda, fix that. And if we can do some housing right away to increase our voter pool and people that are eligible to run for office, that would be ideal. Thank you very much.
And we have one last raised hand from Douglas William.
Douglas Williams, please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, City Council and everyone in the audience. My name is Douglas Williams, former chairman of the Vernon Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Business and Industry Council, and a family business in Vernon since 1971. Juliet Goff has mentioned, as did Steve Freed, the econometric analysis that has to be proven prior to the time that any of these investments go forth. And I think that should be a focus of the city council. We all want to have residents move into Vernon, but they have to be into a facility that is economically advantageous to those developers who are doing so. Last I learned and last I saw, the numbers that the Arroyo Group were using were a little low, and I don't know that it's been revised to determine whether or not this is a viable proposition for the residential units to be constructed on a private basis. On a public basis, that's a different story. On a public basis, on a private basis, I think much more analysis needs to go in, and the city council should truly understand the specific costs and the ramifications of inviting in private investment into the city and how it is going to be profitable for them. Vernon is our home from an investment perspective. Most of us do not vote at the ballot box, but everybody that is in Vernon votes with their bank account. And I think we have to take a tremendous amount of pause and analysis to determine whether or not these are privately funded and whether they will work. I hope that they do. I want them to. I've been involved with this conversation for over 5 years, but I want to make sure that private investment is feasible with these projects. They're beautiful. The renderings are absolutely gorgeous. I think the Arroyo Group has fantastic artists, but at the end of the day, it has to be profitable and it has to be sustainable. And those are my comments, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I wish I was there, but I do not want to spew virus all over the city council chambers, so I'm home. Thank you very much.
And if there's anyone else who'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom window. There are no more raised hands.
Do we have any more public comments there at City Council chambers?
Did Eric Gustafson want to address the council on this item? Mayor, that appears to be it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comments from council?
I'll go first. Thank you, everybody, for your comments, business as well. And this is a really good project for the city that we've been working with in Arroyo Group. But I know we've mentioned many times in these meetings, especially our one-on-ones, the traffic is the main issue that we need to deal with first. And if you can prove the traffic flow is going to improve, then we can talk about the next step of housing. But we also have to remember to keep it sustainable and competitive for Vernon. So whatever we build here, we have to keep that in mind. Our businesses need to still be competitive, and they still need to be the city itself needs to be sustainable going forward. You've heard us comment many times, you've sat with us, but my main concern is the traffic flow and how it's going to affect the businesses south of Vernon, as well as north of Vernon. You know, my comments already on that one-way Santa Fe, I don't like it. You know, growing up in Vernon, driving in the morning, taking my kids to school, coming into the city, coming out of the city, improve the flow of traffic, and then you can improve everything else. Thank you.
Do we have any further comments from council? I'll make a comment. As for myself, I too would like to see how Alameda is going to work first before we make any other steps in the direction that the Arroyo Group presented. I'm still skeptical about project number 3. As I had previously shared with the Arroyo Group, I feel that it's too many units in one place. And I think we should take a look at that and the impact that's going to make. But that's it for me. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments.
I do have a comment. I know one of the important things is a timeline. I know the end goal is 2050, but what does it look like in between from here to 2050? I'm curious. I know for me, a priority is housing as well. So how soon will housing be available? That's kind of more details that I like to see.
Yes, Councilmember Larios, just to answer that question specifically, so this is why the distinction between the regulation and the implementation strategies are important. The zoning regulations go into effect the day the plan is adopted. So if a private landowner wants to build housing on their property, they would be able to do that the date that the plan is adopted. If it is up to the city to develop public land, then it becomes a question, right? It becomes a question of all of you, being able to, I guess, provide some just outline. I think we've heard from the business community that there's a desire to bring in units as soon as possible, but there may also be a desire to leave that off until later. So I think that's a question that is up for the council to make a determination on in terms of the phasing of project number 3, as well as has been mentioned, by Mayor Lopez as well, the density of the development at for project number 3.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. What is the motive behind just targeting childless couples? And I know it's for the business and stuff like that, but how involved, since we want to get voters and stuff and people in council, how involved are those people, let's say in the art district politically, and how would they be involved here? Because that's what we need, more active residents and that they want to participate in council.
Yeah, I think that it can, with any group of people, I guess, any group of residents, there's typically only a small proportion that are very involved, right, in local government, even if it is a single family, suburban, small community, that is the case. I think that the way that projects are developed and who kind of even within that parameter of maybe more non-family households. And by the way, it's not that we're against families, but the environment in Vernon is, it may not be the most attractive place for family households that are looking for, the yard and the place to raise young children as other portions of the metropolitan area. Now, obviously understanding that all of you have done that, and kudos to you for doing that. But looking market wide, I think that's kind of, what we see. So even within the group of non-family households, I think there may be differences. So if a building is being built kind of, simply aimed at folks who have jobs in downtown and are singles or whatever, that may be a population in which a smaller proportion is more likely to be long-term involved than, say, a live work project, where you're kind of tending to attract people who like an industrial environment. They're not just looking for a place to live close to downtown. They like being in this kind of place. They want to set down roots. Obviously, to the extent that they can be condominiums instead of apartments is helpful, but that's not something the city can regulate. So I think some of those are considerations, I guess, in terms of having a population that is invested in the city.
How about, I have a follow-up question. The state mandated new development to include percentage of low-income housing when you develop. With Vernon being at HUD rate and below, how is that going to affect the new development here in Vernon? Would it be considered, okay, well, we could make some regular housing versus a low-income portion of it?
So there is no overall requirement to include affordable housing within new development. Cities can impose that requirement if they want to. The requirement that the state has put on is more narrowly focused, so that it is on properties that cities actually own, right? Properties that cities actually have to be offered up first for low-income housing first, before they can go out to kind of the private market, unless they are over 300 units. So it's not a guarantee that, you know, they will be developed for low-income housing. You know, but it is a right of first refusal for low-income housing developers.
So private development can do market value.
They can
It doesn't
do-
have to be regulated that it's low income unless we council approve something that way.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, thank you for that. To answer some of the earlier, or to speak on some of the earlier points. So Alameda in particular, and you know, Deepak, if you want to say anything else on this, please feel free after I'm done here. But just in terms of the timeline for Alameda East Vernon Truck Corridor, we've already developed. So we've been developing at a greater level of detail the infrastructural changes that would be needed to implement the truck corridor. And we've reached out to the city of Los Angeles to have a meeting with them, because obviously they have part of the corridor and they actually control the signals along Alameda East. So we reached out to them. We are looking forward to a meeting very shortly with them, and you know, hopefully can gain the buy-in of the city of Los Angeles to implement the project. Okay. We are also conducting a fiscal analysis of the project as well. So that is underway, and that will be shared, you know, as well on the project website when that is completed. Early returns are that, you know, the kind of development that we're looking at would be fiscally advantageous to the city based, you know, over current trends. And one thing I did want to mention as well on the issue of center of, you know, of reinvigorating Vernon's competitive advantage as a center of production, because that was a very good point by Marisa, and didn't speak to that much in the presentation. But I think that the you know, the way that we see industrial manufacturing uses in Southern California, you know, we've all become painfully aware, right, especially this week, of some of the challenges that large scale production encounters, right, in California because of the regulatory environment and the you know, high wage state and all of the rest. Where industrial areas within, you know, the LA urban area tend to be going is either they go entirely towards distribution and logistics, or they become more of a mixed use district like this, where they're still active from a manufacturing standpoint. They're actually more active, I think, than what we've seen in the last few decades. But what you have is smaller scale production of more unique, locally crafted goods, because there is a market for that here, and there are consumer preferences, right, that tilt towards the more unique, tilt towards that kind of thing that can be produced locally and then sold, you know, hopefully on site here in Vernon and certainly throughout the LA metropolitan area and other areas. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
I just have one last question. What are the next steps? So the presentation happens today. What happens after this?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. The next steps, are that, we'll take back your feedback. I know, some of the things that we talked about, for example, the exact phasing of projects 1, 2, and 3. I think that is something important, that if there are additional thoughts from the council, we would love to hear them, either today or later. But we basically will begin now to prepare the actual draft specific plan document, which will include all of the zoning regulations that will, establish the new land use regulations for the properties within the specific clusters. So that is the next step. We, at the same time, are preparing the environmental impact report. And then both of those documents, when finalized, will go out to the public for review. I assume there'll be a robust, public review and comment, at which point we will try to address those concerns, and then it will come back to you for your, official action on the plan.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, and we'll also be meeting with the Stakeholders Advisory Committee 2 more times throughout the process. Once to discuss zoning regulations as they're in development, and then the second time to review the full draft specific plan and draft EIR.
Do we have any further questions?
Yeah.
No?
No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you. We will now go on to the public hearings. Agenda item number 4 is request for zoning code variance for 3030 Atlantic Boulevard. Public Works Director Wall will present this item.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, Magellan Atlantic owns the property at 3030 Atlantic Boulevard. This property is a triangle bordered by the 710 freeway, the LADWP transmission lines along the Los Angeles River, and Atlantic Boulevard. The front of the property along Atlantic Boulevard was developed in the 1960s. However, the back half of the property has never been developed because of the railroad tracks cutting across the property and the railroad not allowing an at-grade crossing. After years of negotiation with the railroad, the property owner will be allowed to construct a tunnel under the tracks to access the rest of their property. Building a driveway and a tunnel to reach the back half of the property will result in some loss of the automobile parking and truck loading spaces from the front of the property. The item before you is a request for a variance from the Vernon zoning code allowing for a reduction in the number of automobile parking spaces from the 149 spaces currently provided to 107 spaces, and of truck loading spaces from the 15 currently provided to 12. Magellan has stated that the maximum number of automobile spaces needed to accommodate employees and visitors at the site is 40 spaces, and the 107 remaining after the proposed variance will more than meet on-site parking needs. Public Works planning staff is supportive of the requested variance as the site will continue to be self-parking, and the variance will allow for the productive development of currently vacant land. This concludes my report.
Do any members of the City Council have questions of staff at this time?
No.
I now open the public hearing. If any member of the public would like to speak on this matter, please come to the podium or click the raise hand button. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and business affiliation, if any. If you would like to provide a comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand button.
We have no raised hands.
Seeing that there are none, I now close the public comment portion of the public hearing. Does the city council have any questions of staff at this time?
No.
Seeing that all questions have been addressed, I hereby close the public hearing and open council deliberations. Once deliberations are complete, I will entertain a motion. Is there a motion for this item?
I'll move Ibarra.
I'll second Larios.
Motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Larios to find the action exempt under CEQA and adopt resolution number 2022-18, granting the variance requested for 3030 Atlantic Boulevard. Mayor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Larios,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We will now go to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar may be approved with one motion. Items may be removed from the consent calendar by any member of the council. Those items removed will be considered immediately after the consent calendar. Does council wish to pull any items from the consent calendar?
No.
Are there any public comments for the consent calendar?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
There are none.
May I have a motion for consent calendar item numbers 5 through 26?
I'll move Ibarra.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Councilmember Davis to approve the consent calendar. Mayor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Larios.
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We will now go on to new business. Agenda item number 27 is the USC Keck School of Medicine Internship Affiliation Agreement. Health and Environmental Control Director Adrian will present the staff report.
Good, excuse me. Good morning, Honorable Mayor and Council members. The item before you is an affiliation internship agreement between the city and University of Southern California, USC Keck School of Medicine. The USC Masters of Public Health program offers a rigorous curriculum that attracts dedicated and ambitious professionals with a passion to serve in the public health arena. The program's core coursework aims to develop key public health competencies and skills using cases and examples from industry, ranging from local to global. An integral part of the USC MPH program, the university's field internship program, is a structured and supervised professional experience with an approved agency for which students receive academic credit. As a working partnership between students and public health agencies, the internship offers students hands-on experience in an area of public health, including city, county, state, federal, or community-based agencies. The goal of the internship is to further students' practical experience while enhancing the work of public health. Through the internship, students have the opportunity to demonstrate an integration of coursework into a real-world setting, preparing them for a professional career in public health. USC has developed an innovative internship program that will serve as a national model for recruiting and training a diverse pool of MPH students. The proposed internship program partnership provides the city an opportunity to prepare and encourage the next generation of public health professionals, and allows exposure to Vernon's unique operation, potentially motivating students to consider employment with public health departments in underrepresented and underserved communities. Staff recommends your approval and authorize the city administrator to execute the internship affiliation agreement with USC Keck School of Medicine. The proposed agreement has been reviewed and approved as to form by the City Attorney's Office. That concludes my report, and I'll be ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Does council have any questions of staff for item number 27? Are there any public comments or raised hand buttons?
There are none on Zoom.
May I have a motion for item number 27?
I'll move Larios.
I'll second Ibarra.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lario, seconded by Councilmember Ibarra to approve and authorize the city administrator to execute the internship affiliation agreement with USC Keck School of Medicine. Mayor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Larios,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlot,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go on to item number 28 is the moratorium on warehouse uses, freight and terminals, container storage and parking. Public Works Director Wall will present the staff report.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, over the past couple of decades, Vernon has been changing from primarily productive industrial uses to being a city of warehouses and other logistical uses. And these uses create lots of truck traffic. The logistics trend has accelerated over the past couple of years and does not appear to be slowing down. This is a cause of concern because truck traffic is detrimental to people, significantly impacting the lives and health of people living and working in our city and in the surrounding communities through increased traffic congestion, increased traffic safety risk, especially to smaller vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists, and increased air pollution, especially fine particulate matter air pollution, which has been linked to serious health problems, including lung cancer, chronic heart and lung disease, and decreased lung function, especially in children and the elderly. In addition to impacting people, trucks damage the health of our streets. The city commissioned a pavement management plan to assess the pavement conditions throughout our city street network and to determine funding needs. The average grade for our streets is currently a C-. Much of the reason for this low grade is the damage caused by trucks. It is estimated that it will take between $20 and $25 million to bring our streets up to a B+. Not only do trucks damage the pavement of our streets, trucks also regularly damage other city-owned infrastructure, including power poles, catch basins, traffic signals, and curbs. The city is in the middle of a massive planning effort, and in the coming months, we will update our general plan and zoning code and adopt a specific plan or potentially plans to update our goals and policies for Vernon's future development. Several large industrial properties have either recently come on the market or will soon be on the market in Vernon. Currently, warehouses can be built by right anywhere within the city with no discretion from this council or from staff. The item before you immediately creates a 45-day temporary moratorium on the establishment, expansion, or modification of warehouses, freight terminals, truck terminals, container storage, and container parking in the city of Vernon. This moratorium will allow staff to study these uses and make recommendations to the city council on the appropriate regulation of these uses in coordination with other zoning and planning changes that are currently being considered. This concludes my report. Are there any questions?
I just want to clarify. So we're asking for the 45 days. It's not, you're not prohibiting any new, what's the question? I had one. Okay, so you're not banning it, you're just seeking approval first.
So what this does is it's a pause. This creates a pause for 45 days. And this is driven by a number of reasons. One of them is a bunch of properties have recently come on the market, and we don't have any regulation to have the orderly development of warehouse space or other logistic spaces within Vernon. It's by right now, warehouse spaces. So we'd like to study this issue a little bit, especially because of its the impact to human health of truck trips. So we'd like to have 45 days where we just pause development, and bring back recommendations to the city council for future regulation.
Okay, it's just a pause.
It's just a pause for right now.
How does it hurt us for the 45 days?
How does creating the pause hurt us?
Yeah.
So if without the pause, if somebody were to submit plans for us, we have no way of saying no for warehouse space. And like I said, there's a bunch of property that's on the market. Typically, when a property goes under contract, but before it closes, we've had developers submit plans seeking approval prior to purchase of warehouse space or other development within the city. And so what this does is this just buys us time to study the issue and to see if there's some sort of regulation that we may want to have in place, either limiting size, location, that kind of thing. Or if we make this something that's completely at the council's discretion, say through a CUP for each development.
I believe the mayor was technically disadvantaged for a moment. We just were, the council was asking questions of staff.
Okay.
I don't know if
Okay.
there's any additional.
Is there any other questions of staff at this time?
We have one raised hand.
Wait.
Oh, excuse me, sorry.
I don't see any other questions, Mayor. We do have several speakers.
Okay, are there any public comments for item number 28?
The first is Ralph Vellador. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your business affiliation, if any.
Sure. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and staff. I'm here to speak on this possible moratorium. The city of Vernon is 52 square miles, has over 1,800 businesses, employs over 55,000 people, and is one of the first industrialized cities in the United States. And Vernon does have all the advantages that businesses are seeking. And all the way back from the 1920s and 30s, it has been deemed as an exclusive industrial city. Even your own group, the Royal Group that was spoke today, encouraged more building, encouraged more development. And that would be an opportunity in the way to bring people into our community, bring people into the community here. You want more residents to move in, but you got to be able to bring more businesses in. As businesses are leaving, you need to bring businesses in. A moratorium is going to be a complete step backwards. 45 days is not something that's going to just be 45 days. It pushes back all other development that's going to happen, all future development that's going to happen. And it's going to hurt working people that live in the surrounding cities within Vernon here in Southern California. All the way back, people that live in Cudahy, people that live in Los Angeles, people that live in Commerce, those folks depend on the jobs that are produced here in Vernon. So I implore you to really think about this, what you're planning to do here, and not put up a moratorium. These businesses that are coming here, they're bringing in private money to do development here, to put people to work. People like myself and people that are sitting here today, we depend on the jobs that are produced here in Vernon. Thank you.
Next, Jason Baez.
Thank you so much, Honorable Council, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jason Baez, and I'm a member of Labor's International Union of North America, Local 300. And I am fully against the Ordinance 1283 on the moratorium. The reason being is I grew up in a government housing projects very close to here. And even when I tried to start working and pull my family out of there, I couldn't find a job that would enable me to be able to pay the bills on a regular apartment. And it wasn't until a project like this just happened to land in the perimeter that reaches our projects that would enable me to be a local hire. So seeing that opportunity, I was on it, and I had the chance to enter into our union through a local hire program for one of these types of projects. And I received full training on our trade. They taught me everything and gave me the skills that enabled me to provide for my family sufficiently. And first we moved out of the projects, we got an apartment, then we bought our first house, and then we sold that. We bought a Mexican bakery, then we sold that. Now we own 3 houses on a lot, and it's just amazing. We have to take a step back at times and just thank God for projects like this that gave us the opportunity. Now, one thing is that this is going to be a blessing to local residents. And even after we're gone, these become job centers. And these logistic companies, they're not like other companies. They're very liberal. They're very flexible. They're very open. They give everybody an opportunity. They don't discriminate. If you don't have any experience, you can just walk in there. And a lot of times you can walk out with a job. So we have a tremendous amount of students here. 2 of my daughters are in college right now, and they need flexible schedules. And these types of companies provide those flexible schedules for students. They also open the door for elderly folks that have to come back to the field due to the high cost of living, spouses who need a flexible shift as well. And then, of course, these projects produce yearly revenue for the city, taxes on businesses. And of course, as you brought up, we're going to build a lot more restaurants and businesses here. Well, all these workers that'll be in these facilities will be visiting those businesses. Also, this will be a local job. There'll be people riding bikes here, taking public transportation. That's more vehicles off the road. These projects are a win-win for us. And with all due respect, City of Vernon, exclusively industrial. I believe we're in the right place. And I just hope that you will consider all the good that these projects can do for our community. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jose Rodillo, followed by Robert Wendell.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Jose Rodillo. I'm also a union member from La Yuna. I've been a member since 2004. And I oppose the 45-day moratorium. With high gas prices on the rise, steep rise of interest rate, I honestly believe that this moratorium will lead to a slowdown in construction and have a devastating effect on our family and the economy, which is dependent on the continuance of the work. Please consider the working families this decision will affect. Thank you for your time.
Robert Wendell, followed by Bruce Heathcote.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Robert Wendell, and I am the Director of Environmental Affairs for Dunn Edwards Corporation, a paint manufacturer that has had a business presence in the city of Vernon for 85 years, since 1937. Some of you may recall that I had the pleasure of serving on the Vernon Business and Industry Commission for 6 years, from 2014 to 2020. Dunn Edwards is very concerned about the interim urgency ordinance that would impose a 45-day moratorium on warehouses in various aspects, because it may significantly reduce options for future use of the Dunn Edwards Vernon campus, especially now that we have transferred our manufacturing operations out of state and our campus here is largely unused except for our main office. We sincerely hope that your staff will complete as scheduled its report on measures to mitigate the conditions that led to the moratorium, so that the moratorium expires as provided and is not extended beyond the initial 45 days. We also hope that any such measures implemented will be effective and not overly burdensome to companies like Dunn Edwards. Thank you for your attention this morning.
Bruce Heathcote, followed by Steve Freed.
Hello, my name is Bruce Heathcote. Thank you, Mayor Lopez and Council for giving us an opportunity to speak. I represent the Dunn Edwards Paint Company as well, Dunn Edwards Corporation. And I'm a commercial real estate broker at Lean Associates, but I've represented Dunn Edwards real estate requirements for the past 25 years exclusively. So I do have a good knowledge of their properties, specifically their property at 4885 East 52nd Place in Vernon. Our biggest concern, and I stand in opposition, and Dunn Edwards stands in opposition to the moratorium. We recognize that there are needs within the city. There are infrastructure needs. There are other types of needs that need to be addressed. But a moratorium was, in my opinion, is kind of the nuclear approach, because it does exactly opposite what the city council has done and their forebears have done for decades to encourage development here in the city of industry, or in the city of Vernon. Dunn Edwards moved their manufacturing facility to Phoenix at the last recession. We sit on the precipice of a recession. I think we all know that it's government induced, and it's most unfortunate, but we're here. That's where we're at. So in the next few years, we'll be seeing reduced economic opportunities. And why did Dunn Edwards move? It wasn't because Vernon wasn't a nice place. It was because of the employment costs of wages, workers' comp, and unions that were bearing down upon them. I think that it's important, and we support the requirements for infrastructure. We support that the city public works folks take a look at this. Maybe they address it with perhaps various fees or assessments to development, but a moratorium puts a message out to the community. Vernon is no longer to do business. Thank you very much.
Steve Freed, followed by Heather Krosner.
Good morning again, Mayor Lopez and fellow city council persons. My name is Steve Freed. My family has owned the 315,000 square foot, 31 unit multi-tenant warehouse buildings at 3001 through 3131 Bandini. The city encouraged us to build those warehouse buildings over 50 years ago, because at that point in time, Bandini was a dirt road and there was no bridge over the LA River. And by us building there and our neighbors building on their properties, the city had the funds to finish that roadway. And now the city is putting a moratorium against my property and all the warehouse uses. Warehouse uses are probably almost 50% of the land use in this city. I understand the concern behind the loss of Farmer John and other recent large utility users leaving the city of Vernon. I also understand what large utility usage means to our city's ability to pay its bills. This draconian moratorium is nothing more than a panicking city staff using a nuclear bomb to achieve what a much more targeted measure could accomplish with far less of a negative impact to the Vernon business community. This measure, if enacted without changes, will result in many lawsuits against the city of Vernon. The press and social media will have a field day with headlines reading, "Business-friendly Vernon has become dramatically unfriendly to 50% of its business community." Vernon will once again be portrayed as unstable and poorly operated in the press and in the courts. This future can be avoided. It's not necessary. Prospective large power users want to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in cities with stable city governments and not in cities involved in anti-business instability and practices. The proposed 45-day moratorium is far too restrictive to Vernon's existing warehouse property owners and businesses. Moving a business is an expensive proposition. Prospective new tenants want to know they can prosper in the city of Vernon. By limiting the term of the lease to 3 years with no options to extend, most tenants will choose to move to a different city without limitation of how long they can stay in a building. Why improve a building on a 3-year lease? I won't even be able to sign option agreements for extended periods of time. This is going to cost people who lease their properties out a lot of money. The city will be unable to solve this issue within a 40-day timeframe. That's impossible. They're going to need at least 3 years of extending this moratorium to get through this. And that cannot stand. We're not talking about 45 days. Please ask staff to modify the proposed moratorium to be less catastrophic to longtime business and property owners of the city of Vernon. Find a solution. The entire warehouse community is posed to organize against any attempt to overly interfere with our property rights. Do we really want to repeat this battle all over again? Thank you.
Next is Heather Krosner, followed by Michael Bagwell.
Good morning, City Council members. My name is Heather Krosner, and I'm Senior Vice President of Development with Bridge Industrial. The moratorium being proposed today comes at a very risky time. The economy is headed for a recession, and we are seeing the start of a freeze in the industrial market resulting from interest rate hikes and inflation. Today's moratorium will further spook the market and could effectively end industrial investment in Vernon until the next market cycle. This would result in the loss of millions of dollars of fees and revenue for the city and the end of hundreds of good-paying construction and warehouse jobs for local Vernon residents. With the economy already in a free fall, this is the last thing that the city and local workers need. While the city's stated goals are admirable, a moratorium is not needed to achieve any of them. Planning is already analyzing updates to the zoning code and the general plan amendment to address appropriate industrial uses. This can continue without halting new investment. The council can ask staff to study new impact fees for street maintenance and repair that's tied to new development. All of this can be accomplished without a moratorium that would make an already unstable economic environment much worse. Today's moratorium is also being proposed without any time for meaningful public input. We were dismayed to learn about this ordinance less than 24 hours ago in the middle of a federal holiday. With today's hearing at 9 a.m., stakeholders never had the opportunity to meet with staff to discuss all the potential ramifications of the ordinance or think through alternatives to freezing development. Staff was deprived of public input, and the city council was deprived of a thorough evaluation of all the potential pitfalls of this proposal. We respectfully request that the city council deny approval of this moratorium and ask staff to update the city's zoning code and general plan amendment through the normal public review and public hearing process. There is no urgency that justifies passing today's moratorium, which would bypass public input, avoid thorough planning and economic analysis, and sacrifice city revenue and local jobs. Thank you very much for your time.
Michael Bagwell, followed by Clark Newhoff.
Please forgive my attire. I wasn't expecting to address the city council this morning when I got it. My name is Michael Bagwell. I'm here representing Sandberg Furniture and the Sandberg family. We are very much against Ordinance 1283. The Sandberg family has owned facilities in Vernon for the past 82 years. In fact, in our oldest parcel, it was also a dirt road when we built. Stephen Sandberg and John Sandberg here today are 4th and 5th generation owners and managers of businesses in this city. In that time, the Sandbergs have bought and sold parcels as business conditions have dictated. The urgent ordinance before you today will detrimentally affect a sales contract that is currently in escrow. A significant amount of time and money has been spent on this project. There have been multiple meetings with city staff. There have been no advisories of any actions contemplated today. We hope you will not adopt and to give you more notice than you have given us. We have sought out legal counsel to aggressively protect our property rights if need be. This is no pause. Your ordinance in section 4D references months required to gather data and propose general plan and specific plan updates, have hearings, and eventually adopt. We believe this moratorium will last way more than 45 days. We are not understanding the city's determination of urgency. The findings submitted by staff are economic in scope. Okay, let's discuss the economics and take appropriate steps to mitigate. Again, as longtime business and property owners in Vernon, we urge you not to adopt ordinance 1283.
Thank you. Next is Clark Newhoff, followed by Marissa O'Gean.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, council people. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Clark Newhoff. I'm with Allaire Property Group. Our company owns and invests here in Vernon. In fact, we're under contract and financially committed to purchase the corner lot of Soto and Leonis, which is outside of the West Side SP. The 3-acre site would support a modern warehouse, would replace the really blighted, unsightly, and obsolescent buildings that are there, and replace it with a new warehouse, modern amenities, just 60,000 square feet with 5,000 square feet of office, and just 6 dock-high positions. The type of expected use for that building is a light manufacturer, maybe a packager, light distribution, with front office support staff as well. This project is, in my estimation, representative of much of the redevelopment here in Vernon. Smaller infill sites supporting smaller warehouse buildings. Yeah, really a smaller scale. Up until just last week, we were told to submit our construction drawings, that the project would be available to us by right. Now I'm not sure what to tell my capital partners, kind of in this high stakes quandary at the moment. So I want to be brief with just 3 points, if I may. First, investors invest and gentrify in reliable land use rights. These rights would appear in jeopardy today. Second, the sort of project I just described seems to be the unintended target of truck yards, transload facilities, and the proverbial FedExes of the world, or bigger tracks that occasionally come available here in the city of Vernon. But third, and probably most importantly, and I think you've heard it from others here already today, the development community is willing to work with you, work with staff. It's simply not necessary to stop business in order to make better business. So because the land use rights are the foundation of progress and improvement, because this moratorium is really quite indiscriminate in its scope, and because its goals can principally be accomplished outside of stopping business and investment here in the city, I ask that you please reject this moratorium and work instead with investors like us on sensible mitigation for better infrastructure and safety in the city. Thank you.
Marissa O'Gean, followed by Eric Gustafson.
Good morning again. Marisa with the Vernon Chamber. Thank you, council, again. The Vernon Chamber was very surprised and remains concerned over the proposed ordinance to place a moratorium. In essence, it's a hard stop on any current lease agreement and future uses for property owners in the city. The chamber understands the importance of retaining and attracting significant power customers to ensure a fiscally sustainable city that really is, in essence, has been designed to cater to a manufacturing community. The chamber, its legacy stakeholders and property owners desire to partner with the city to plan its destiny and develop stronger public-private partnerships. But this is not the process, to blindside stakeholders, property owners, and real estate community who may be in current negotiations with prospective tenants. Instead, it represents a knee-jerk reaction with little transparency that jeopardizes property owners and their economic well-being. We understand the significant economic impact of Farmer John's departure and the concern over other large manufacturers leaving the city, the state, to other locations. We're aligned, the chamber remains aligned with the city and its goal to attract viable electric customers in the city. I think we talked about the number 2 goals is to make sure production is strong in the city, and the second was to make sure the city is fiscally sustainable. But today's proposed ordinance sends the wrong message. We have no other option but to oppose the ordinance, and if passed today, we are committed to working aggressively with the city on a plan to replace the moratorium at the end of 45 days. But you've heard the testimony, it may take longer to develop a strong and substantive plan. You've also heard of other creative ideas that could replace such a plan. So we strongly recommend the city to put together an attraction marketing strategy that involves stakeholders, brokers, developers to tap into the shared networks and ensure that we retain and attract these strong customers to our city, and not at the threat of property owners and the warehouse distribution community. There must be balance. Thank you.
Eric Gustafson is next to speak. And for those on Zoom, I've noticed that there's comments in the chat box. Those will not be considered by the city council. If you would like to make those comments out loud, please use the raise your hand feature, or you can email me at cityclerk@cityofvernon.org. But the chat feature will not be considered as a record of this hearing, nor will it be considered by the city council. Sorry, Eric, go ahead.
No problem. Good morning, Mayor Lopez and honorable members of the council. Nice to see you all this morning. You've already heard from many people who have their well thought out ideas and thoughts around why this moratorium is not the right approach. I think to me, the most important part is to echo all the hard work that we have done in the city for transparency, for collaboration. Bill, Melissa, we've worked hard together on all these issues, and others that sat on the dais with you to fight for the city. And this approach really goes against the grain of that. And it's disappointing for me to stand here after all these years of hard work to have this type of conversation with all of you. I put myself on the line for the city and for our family. Those of you in the audience may know that we're celebrating our 100th anniversary. I'm the 4th generation of our family to run Coast Packing. We've been a landowner for 100 years here. And I think stifling opportunity and growth is not the right approach, but working together and collaborating with each other is. Hence the reason you have the Business Industry Council and other stakeholders who are willing to engage with the city. And I would like to propose that we do not enact a moratorium, but we do continue to work together as we have to drive that public-private partnership that has been very fruitful for the last decade plus after fighting off AB 46 and other threats to the city. So I would like to engage all of you and others to work together. And if there's anything I can do to be of help to do that, I'm always happy to be of service to help Vernon be successful like it always has. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominic, if you could call the first Zoom speaker.
We'll start with Stephanie Mallory.
I'm sorry, Stephanie
Mallory.
Mallory.
Hello, and thank you, Madam Mayor and Honorable Council, for hearing me. I am the Director of Construction and Owner Representative for Jetro Cash and Carry, 194,000 square foot building on the corner of Santa Fe and Slauson. We employ over 100 employees at this location. We also own the building that is attached to us at 2380 at the Flow Cold Storage that's right beside us. Jetro's been in town since 1991. We started planning a project and we started 9 months ago. Lease decisions were already made based on the projected construction. And this is actually coming out of the blue. So we are opposed to ordinance 1283 and the moratorium. I'm confused of when this letter went out and how you were planning to notify all of these businesses in this ordinance. Construction materials are increasing by the day. 45 days will increase cost, not to mention the cost that we've already incurred. Spaces will sit vacant with no payroll taxes coming in while this is delayed. And plan reviewers will take longer because there are more projects on hold. So this 45-day holding period will become 6 months because there are a lot of projects and a lot of leases out there that are going to be in the queue. So thank you for hearing me. We are opposed.
I think we might have lost her at the end.
We'll move on to the next speaker. If Stephanie, you have any more comments? The next speaker will be.
Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jack Klein. Please unmute your mic.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, I am Jack Klein, President of Lee & Associates Los Angeles, Chairman of the Vernon Business and Industry Commission, and a 39-year advocate and supporter of the City of Vernon. Vernon has had many challenges in the past and has risen on the platform of integrity and transparency. Vernon has been and claims to be a partnership of the city, its citizens, and the business community. The current city administration has done tremendous work in building a reputation of integrity and transparency, at the same time fiscally fine-tuning the city's finances. All the sweat and hard work of reputation building is likely to be torn away by the passage of this moratorium and disregard of the partnership between the city, its citizens, and the business community. Many will view the passage of the moratorium as arbitrary and some punitive, as it will certainly take away property rights of all, even if it is for a limited time, which these types of moratoriums are always extended, longer than initially proposed. I urge the City Council to reconsider moving forward with a moratorium and work together with its citizens and business community to assist the city in resolving its concerns. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Next, we have Douglas Williams. Please unmute your mic.
Yes, good morning again, City Council and Mayor. Douglas Williams, a member of, with Jack Klein of the Business and Industry Council, Commissioner on that board. Yesterday, I received calls from my contacts throughout the country with regard to what is going on in Vernon. This moratorium went viral in 15 minutes and went from Vernon all the way across the country to those that are in contract, those who are looking to move into Vernon with regard to developing real estate for logistical use. It is abhorrent to have read something like this the other day, when we have been for at least 5 to 10 years working hand in glove to make Vernon, again, transparent, open, and welcoming to the business community. And I got to tell you, I was dumbfounded yesterday when Jack Klein, the chairman of the Business and Industry Council, called and said, are you aware of what's going on? And I said, no, I'm not. I just read it. And I would say quickly to the city council, who is in charge of the city, to vote no on this recommendation of a moratorium and to say no to stopping continued development of and interest in Vernon within the capital markets that are in the billions of dollars that are looking at Vernon. That's where we are right now. Vernon has the opportunity to bring in billions of dollars of investment. And this moratorium, in my opinion, will put a foot on the neck of those companies and those capital markets that are looking to invest in Vernon for the purposes of developing logistical, warehouse, and distribution facilities. I urge you today, as the city council, to vote no on this moratorium. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Stefan Wandel. Please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but it's a little quiet.
Okay, good, thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Stefan Wandel. I'm the Chair of Legislative Affairs for NAIOP SoCal. NAIOP is Southern California's largest real estate organization. We represent over 1,000 members in 95 companies. Our organization has a lot of experience working with cities in Southern California that have similar issues as what the city of Vernon is. And in many cases, we have been able to work with cities to avoid extreme solutions such as a moratorium. So the moratorium as it's currently drafted is punitive, is unfair, it's unnecessary. There are many better ways to do this. Why is it punitive? Because a great many property owners, as stated, have long-term investments into the city. A great many leases have automatic 5 or 10-year lease renewal options. The city ordinance as it's currently drafted is essentially mandating a property owner to violate a lease and to be in default of the lease, which clearly no good outcome will come of that. It is unnecessary because under CEQA, an existing city regulation, an existing state regulation, city planning departments can evaluate impacts of any and all projects. They can look at traffic, they can look at noise, they can look at air quality. So again, existing regulations provide plenty of opportunities for the city under existing regulations. There's a lot of discussion around air quality out there for folks who are paying attention and looking into the details of air quality. While it's clearly not perfect and probably never will be, air quality has improved regularly over the last 20 years. Trucks are more efficient now than when most of these warehouses were initially built. So again, while clearly there's issues and improvements can be done, again, existing regulations are addressing this issue, and in many cases have already improved the issues of air quality. Similar with respect to traffic, there's many opportunities for the city to evaluate traffic impacts of new projects, to identify new and higher impacts than initially anticipated. Again, that's not new.
Mr. Wandel, if you could wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Lastly, we'd be very willing to work with the city on alternative arrangements. A number of cities that have considered this have found out that you can get to a quicker solution than essentially taking a year to work through all these complicated arrangements. Clearly, 45 days isn't going to do it. And as part of NAIOP SoCal, we're very willing to work with the city, as we have with many other cities. And we usually have been able to bridge the gap and help property owners and city come together, including provide financial arrangements satisfactory to cities. So we'll provide additional information and contact separately. We just have had no time to to do this at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please state your company again?
The organization is NAIOP SoCal, spelled NAIOP, SoCal for Southern California.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Next, we have Brian Wong. Please go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Good morning, and thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council for the opportunity to speak. My name is Brian Wong, and I work for North Palisade Partners. We're a Southern California-based industrial developer. While we certainly understand some of the concerns raised under the urgency ordinance, we also understand that through excellent collaboration with Director Wall and the Public Works Department, as well as other departments within the city, that projects can be built to a higher standard and site planned appropriately to reduce impacts to sensitive receptors. We have 2 projects in the city right now. One is undergoing plan check and is essentially ready to issue permits, and the other is completing its site plan review process. And in both cases, we've received great feedback from the city in terms of improving our site plan, being sensitive to sensitive receptors. And so our feeling is that through proper planning and collaboration, these projects can enlighten the area, provide, jobs to the neighboring areas. And so for those reasons, we oppose this moratorium. Further, to the extent the moratorium is adopted, we would urge the council to exempt projects which have made significant progress through the permitting and site plan review process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Next, we have Matt McCroskey. Please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hi, good morning, Mayor and City Council. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Matt McCroskey, and I'm a broker with Jones Lang LaSalle. It's one of the largest real estate companies on the globe. And I stand in opposition to the moratorium. I practically grew up in the city of Vernon, working in my grandfather's warehouse making toys. It's been incredible to witness the evolution of the city since those days. Now, I represent both buyers and sellers of industrial real estate, and my clients include some of the largest public retirement funds in the world. Due to the buy right nature of the city, Vernon has been a great investment for public and private investors, providing safe retirement income for the hardworking employees of the state and beyond. A moratorium is going to result in these investors halting investment in the city, of which some of these investors may never consider Vernon to be a prudent investment again. This could be devastating to the local economy and workforce. The impact would significantly outlast any temporary moratorium or period of time. I'm happy to help in any way, and thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you. Next, we have Jimmy Andrioli. Please unmute your mic.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor Lopez and Council. Jimmy Andrioli with Baker Commodities. We have over 200 employees at our rendering facility here in Vernon, as well as 2 cold storage facilities that we operate within the city. We would stand against this urgency ordinance because it would impact our operations. We're at our rendering plant. We do export and fill cargo containers that are transported out of the area and out of the country. And depending on volume and stuff, we may need to request additional space and such like that. So this would obviously stop us and prevent us from being able to complete these exports that Baker participates in, as well as any potential operations that we have within our cold storage facilities. It's very concerning to us to see the city taking such, or the city staff recommending such a drastic step with very little notice to the business community. And certainly, we stand opposed to this and would much prefer to actually work with the city on establishing, a proper goals and proper regulations to assist the city in making these decisions moving forward. But, the impacts of this on the businesses in the community, as well as potential investments, are just too large to ignore. And we have to stand firmly oppose this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Karina Macias. Please unmute your mic.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just, before I start, I wanted to clarify, is this general public comment or is it specific to to the item on the moratorium?
It's specific to the moratorium item.
Oh, okay, can I come back for general comment? I had a comment on on another item on the agenda, so I just wanted to clarify.
We've completed through, this is item number 28. So the prior items have already been acted upon. Is it?
No, it's just a comment on one of the presentations, but I don't know if I can give it now or do you have another section for general comment?
Go ahead and do it now, if that's okay with the mayor.
Yes, that's fine.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Madam Mayor and City Council members. My name is Karina Macias. I'm a council member from the neighborhood city of Huntington Park. I just wanted to jump in quickly here today in the meeting. I know you had a presentation on the Vernon Westside specific plan this morning on your council agenda. I've always appreciated the partnership with Vernon City Council and its council members, but I am highly concerned with this specific plan. Especially the diverting of traffic, of truck traffic specifically. And I would have appreciated for Vernon staff to, meet with our staff here in the city of Huntington Park, just to, because this is really a regional plan because it will affect our city as well. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention to hopefully have a discussion about this specific plan. And I will be requesting for this item to be added to our city council agenda at some point in the future. And just to have a discussion of how we will move forward to have that discussion with the city of Vernon. Like, again, I've always appreciated the partnership with the city. And I think this specific plan needs to be discussed with the neighboring city, especially Huntington Park, which will affect us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment is from Tom Ashcraft. Please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Good morning, Mayor Lopez and honorable members of the City Council. My name is Tom Ashcraft, and I'm the managing partner of 9th Street Partners, a developer focused on the redevelopment of infill industrial assets in Los Angeles. Our company generally develops buildings between the size of 40,000 and 130,000 square feet. First, I'd like to thank you all for your service to the City of Vernon. I would also like to thank staff for their professionalism and assistance in the projects I've been involved in over the years in Vernon. You have a great team here in Vernon. I'm here today to speak about our opposition to item 28, the moratorium on warehouse uses or development of warehouse uses. We currently own a 3-acre parcel in the city of Vernon that is in the process of redevelopment. While our project would be exempt from the moratorium, I oppose the blatant nature of this moratorium. Our project and others that may be proposed in the city of Vernon include a large remediation component. We are cleaning up our site and making it safe for productive reuse and righting a wrong from actions that occurred over 80 years ago. If this moratorium was in place 6 months ago, our project would not have moved forward and the legacy environmental contamination would not have been addressed to help make Vernon a better place to live and work. As you heard from many speakers today, we all understand the city's concerns, but why the blanket pause on basically all development in the city of Vernon? This action is sudden, without discussion with stakeholders in the community, and stops investment in the city. Why not consider other exemptions to the moratorium based on parcel size or projects that include environmental remediation to protect the community? Thank you again for your time. Vernon has always been a great city to invest, and I hope you decide to keep Vernon open for business. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Juliet Goff. Please unmute your mic.
Hi, good morning again, Mayor Lopez and Council. I realize I did not properly introduce myself when I spoke last. Juliet Goff, I'm the owner of Cal Plastics here in Vernon. I'm also a past chairman of the Vernon Chamber of Commerce, a former member of the Community Benefit Fund, and current housing commissioner, as well as being on the West Side Specific Committee Plan Committee. I just simply want to say, I think this sends the wrong message. After all the reform work we went through, we want to be more transparent. I think we can find a better way. There are other levers to pull to address the concerns that brought this measure to the dais today. And I think we can and we should do better. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Thomas Condon. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you. This is Tom Condon with Colliers International. I'm also a member with Jack Klein and Doug Williams and Jimmy Andarelli on the Business and Industry Commission. I thank you, council members, for allowing me to have a moment here to give my thoughts. I wholeheartedly agree with the fellow community members that have spoken today. And as a specific example, I represent a property, an eyesore in Vernon at the corner of Slauson and Boyle. We have a 70,000, it's the old Bernard F. Steel facility, which has been shuttered, and we've had 3 tenants at the property for several years. We have planning commission approval to build a 70,000 square foot warehouse where we would happily entertain warehousing uses, light manufacturing, whatever the market brings to the table. We have recently, I believe we have full planning commission approval to move forward with our project. With construction the way it is today, when you order a roof structure, if there's a 12-month lead time, we have committed to purchasing this roof structure. We've also given notice to our 3 tenants to vacate the building for the new construction and really turning around this eyesore at the corner of Boyle and Slauson. This is right across the street from 24 Hour Fitness and Starbucks. And since the tenants have moved out in the past few weeks, the building has been vandalized. The power has been stripped. We are scheduled for demolition the 1st or 2nd week of July, and we can't put the rabbit back in the hat. And so in addition to the fact that the owner is ready to go, the contractors are ready to go, and this is gonna backfire, I think, on the city, because as people know, this has been an eyesore for years, and we employ the city to not allow this ordinance to move forward and not set back our desire to make the city more beautiful. And of course, Slauson and Boyle is right at the entrance of the city of Vernon. So I'm against this ordinance, like my fellow community members, and I hope that we have a good outcome here. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further raised hands.
Honorable Mayor.
Sorry, Dan. If the person who submitted the chat message would like to address the council, please use the raise your hand feature. As indicated, the message in the chat will not be considered by the city council and will not be included in the record for this item. So if you'd like to provide those comments, please do so now.
There are no raised hands.
Okay, sorry, Dan.
City Clerk, I would like to call for a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, do we have Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Larios?
Yes, Larios is in the meeting.
She's transferred online.
Mayor, if we could just hold tight for just a minute, please?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, Mayor Dominic, is the meeting resumed?
Yes, we can begin.
Thank you. So if we could note, we're reconvening the meeting at 11:37 with all council members present. Mayor Pro Tem Larios is participating remotely now as well.
Okay, thank you for that, City Clerk. So we'll proceed. Do we have any further public comments or any further questions for item number 28?
Mayor, I have some comments from staff if there's no more public comments.
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
Thank you. Do we
So,
have
Mayor,
any public?
Yeah, I'd like to address, staff would like to address a couple of issues, and we really thank the business community for coming out today and their feedback. And those issues will be addressed shortly by our city attorney and also by our public works director. But I want to make sure that I comment and go on record to state some facts. And the number one fact is that we are committed to 100% transparency. We are also committed to good governance here at the city of Vernon. I take the statements to heart when people challenge that. And for whatever reasons, I just want to make sure that city council understands that what we do and what we're doing here is to protect the interest of the city, the community, and the residents. And so I want to address some of the issues that were brought forward by some of the speakers, and staff will address that. And then we'll answer any additional questions that that city council may have. But I'll turn it over to our city attorney to start.
Yes, good morning, Mayor and members of City Council. Just to address the form and the procedure before Dan addresses the substantive issues. Just wanting to point out that the city, Vernon is not an outlier in terms of introducing a temporary urgency moratorium on warehouse development. Similar urgency ordinances have been proposed in recent months and recent years in other jurisdictions that deal with a lot of warehouse development, such as Pomona, Redlands, Chino, Colton, Harupa Valley, Paris, Riverside, and San Bernardino. The proposed ordinance also includes exemptions for pending projects and approved permits, which Dan is going to go into in a little bit more detail. And the statutory authority for the proposed action is set forth in the government code. It's section 65858. Sorry, I'm still getting over my COVID cough, which allows for a city to adopt an interim urgency ordinance without public hearing on a 4/5 vote to allow time for the planning department to study the immediate impacts on public health, safety, and welfare. It's essentially intended as a pause of new development to allow time for that analysis. During those 45 days, staff also has to prepare and present a report to council regarding the steps that are being taken to mitigate the circumstances that gave rise to the urgency. If an extension is recommended, that would require a notice public hearing, at which point all interested parties would be, given the full opportunity to provide comment and input. And then that would also trigger another 4/5 approval vote by council. It's fully within council's discretion as a policy matter on whether to adopt or reject the proposed ordinance. But I did just want to clarify that the legal process under which it was introduced is fully compliant with state law and our charter.
And council members, I'd like to address some of the comments that were made today about the stopping of construction. So this does not stop construction. If you would, section 5 of the moratorium, part B, under exemptions, there's paragraph 4 that says that the establishment, expansion, or modification of any warehouse or related facilities with pending permits or that have already received full approvals and commenced construction or incurred expenses for construction prior to this ordinance would be exempt from the ordinance. Now, when staff put this together, we're viewing pending permits as being if somebody has submitted a site plan to us, because that's the first step in the planning approval process that we take at the city. And so that would be a pending permit. So people who have already invested a great deal of time and money in getting these projects are still going through. What this moratorium does is it stops somebody from submitting a new project or an expansion of an existing project from scratch during this 45-day period. And so it allows us to step back and take a look. And the reason why we're very concerned is not only is there a bunch of property that's recently become available, but you heard from the public testimony that over 50% of the land in Vernon is currently used for warehouse purposes. So we are rapidly becoming not a productive industrial city, but a city of warehousing. And so in order to get a better sense of what direction, if any, we should go on the regulation of this, we would like to have a pause to see, do we want to regulate this going forward, or do we want to continue to just let this be wide open? And so during this 45-day pause, we will be meeting with the development community, with the warehouse owning, property owning community, and we'll figure out where we go with regulation, if we go anywhere with regulation. And so there were also comments made about the 45-day period. So the 45 days, the extension of that is completely at the discretion of the city council. Staff is pretty confident that we can bring a recommendation to the city council within that 45-day period for what we do going forward. And that's with collaboration of the property owners in this city. So if there are any questions.
Dan, can I interrupt you for a
Sure.
second? How are you going to work with the property owners over the next 45 days?
So people who have made public comment here, we're going to, we will attempt to contact them. We're going to contact the chamber. We will also do some sort of public notice, not only on our website, but we'll look at other ways of getting the word out that we're looking to actively collaborate with the property owning community here.
Dan, do you want to elaborate on how warehousing affects Vernon right now? I mean, I know we talked about some of the issues with the environment. Is there anything else that you would like to?
Right. So right now, there's a couple of recent trends in warehousing that are very concerning. So one of them is that property values have gone up very significantly in Vernon for all uses. And what this does is when a warehouse has invested a lot of money in the land, then the intensity of the use of that warehouse goes way up from what we've traditionally seen. And so that intensity of use drives way more truck trips than what we've traditionally seen in warehousing. And so it's truly the truck trips that are very concerning as to the use. But then there are other impacts to Vernon. Modern warehouses do not employ very many people compared to a traditional productive industrial use. Modern warehousing, again, there's the environmental concerns. Modern warehouses do not use much in the way of electricity or other energy sources, and that's also a concern for our utility and for our general fund.
So city council does have the authority to vote down this item and or approve it. However, I want to say that staff is committed to working with the business community over the next 45 days and really hearing what they have to say and bringing back something to city council within the next 45 days. And again, projects that are in the queue or have been submitted are not impacted will be exempt. So a lot of the comment that you got today doesn't really apply to certain individuals because those projects are already in the queue and they would move forward per the Public Works Director. So with that, we've concluded our presentation and we're available to answer any questions that City Council may have.
Does city council have any questions on this item for item number 28?
I do. I have a bunch of them. We've always talked about sustainability in the city of Vernon, and we can't rely on our power all the time. With this moratorium, I understand it's just a hold on future projects, anything put together now, what I understand off of everything that I read, for 45 days. So I personally don't see an issue with that because current projects are not being held up. For my issue is, it is the air quality in Vernon because we have SELA, we have a big SELA community out here and we've been impacted by them greatly within the last year. And looking at traffic coming into Vernon, out of Vernon, this West Side project, our main concern is truck trips coming in and out of Vernon and how to sustain it, how to keep it there. Our roads, our infrastructure, our, everything that's listed in here, I see a reason why we need to put a pause on this for 45 days to reevaluate it and figure it out. I don't see how it's going to affect unless you guys can prove it to me, but 45 days hold on any future projects, I don't see how it's going to affect them by saying, hey, hold on, let us reevaluate it because the city's changing and we're changing every day and we're changing every year. And with COVID, we've seen a lot of industry leaving Vernon, leaving California overall. Just remember, when you guys look at this and you work with the people, I don't understand why it wasn't at BIC. Why wasn't it presented to BIC? And if it was presented to BIC, if we could get that info on what was talked about, but that's where it should have gone first before here. Also a heads up, transparency. We've worked together with the business community in the last 10 years. We've reached out to them. We said, hey, we need help with this, any ideas? And we bounced back. I'm a little disappointed that you guys didn't reach out to that community. But again, I don't know the reason why. I'm just reading what I'm reading and in this big old Thursdays it's published. So the last 4 days I've been reading it. And for business communities that you say you got a 24-hour notice, it's out every Thursday. I got the same notice you did. I just got 2 days heads up by reading this. I work with you guys, all of you guys, some of you, the majority of you guys. Eric, thanks for calling me out on this last one. But, like I said, I'm really disappointed that city staff didn't reach out to them to give them a heads up on this and try to work something out. We've worked with the community to sustain Vernon and to grow Vernon. Let's continue that. I'm going to echo what Carlos said about transparency. We've been on this since day one, 2011. I want to go back then. Let's keep it. Let's keep that as our model here. We've talked about it, we fought for it, and let's continue it. I want to see a plan on how do we keep Vernon sustainable, our roadways, air quality. I want to understand all of that as you guys bring it back. And what are specific plan goals? Because we have specific plan goals for the West Side project. And I think item number 1 and 2, reinvigorating the city's competitive advantage as a center of production should be kept in mind. Strengthen and provide long-term stability to the city's financial position. Everybody's on the same boat on that. And that banner that we have listed here, keeping it competitive. We want to keep it competitive. I don't want to see businesses leave Vernon. I want to see it. And even though we're adding a little bit of housing here, you guys know the reason why we need housing. We've talked about this 7 years ago when I came onto council about adding housing and the future of Vernon if we don't add housing. So keeping that in mind and finding a balance between industry and residential. But I'd really like to see you guys work with our community on coming up with a plan. If that means increasing some sort of a tax or using a tax, because we have 2 taxes that are going to sunset soon. My main concern is working with the stakeholders. We residents are just a handful, but at the end of the day, we need them to go out and push for whatever you guys are asking for, because not all these residents understand what the sustainability of Vernon is needing. But other than that, I have like 3 pages of my pros and cons, and I'm kind of balanced in between. It's at the end of the day, it's what's going to drive Vernon and what's going to keep us sustainable.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Councilmember
okay.
Ibarra, if I may address your concern about why we didn't reach out in advance and why this wasn't a notice public hearing. The the state code contemplates doing it this way, and the reason is to prevent somebody from front-running regulation. So if we put out a notice, then anyone who even contemplates a warehouse use all of a sudden makes a plan submittal in order to get ahead of regulation. And so that would kind of defeat the purpose. And that's why we took advantage of a specific statute in state law in order to do it this way. And again, it's just a 45-day moratorium.
I
which is also-
understand, but I think right now, you guys, your goal should be shorter than 45 days of getting this,
Oh,
done.
yeah,
We'll
we
put a
wanna get it-
45-day, I'm fine with the 45-day hold, but you need to work on this faster than anything. I know staff and everybody else, if you guys can clear your board and work with staff, this is something that it's important to you and you guys have all addressed it. But I think you really need to work on this faster than 45 days and come back to council with something quick.
And if I could add, we will be going to the BIC with this. We'll be calling for a special meeting within the next 45 days. So we will bring it to the BIC, but again, we couldn't bring it beforehand because of the statute. And then secondly, it doesn't really affect manufacturing distribution or light distribution or any of the development projects that are currently in place. So Vernon obviously, welcomes manufacturing and distribution here in Vernon. However, the warehouse distribution is what's being affected here. Dan, you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, so this is really, this regulation's aimed at the larger scale warehousing that there's no value add. It's basically goods in, goods out. No labor, no utilities, nothing good other than truck traffic, and that's not a good. So that's what this is truly aimed at. And additionally, other logistics facilities that are just truck based. We want to take a look at them and see if there's a better way to regulate what's going on here.
I would like to piggyback off of Councilmember Ibarra's comments. I think having a 45-day pause with allowing and proceeding with without an issue for current projects is okay. I just want to ensure that we have everyone at the table that's going to be impacted by this as soon as possible, and to have for them to be heard is critical. I would like to see them continue to share their thoughts and their views and how we can come together to ensure that this is the best for the city and for our business community and residents alike.
I have a question. Is there any way that we can reach our goals without the pause? I've read it as well, and I spoke, I'm kind of in the middle as well too. I understand the concerns of the business community. I understand the concerns of our community, our residents, our neighbors. Can you just reiterate, the importance of the pause for us, please?
Sure. So from a staff perspective, the reason for the pause is to prevent anyone who's even contemplating but doesn't have a serious plan for a warehouse from making a submittal prior to regulation occurring, just so that they're in the queue. And so that's the reason for the pause. If we were not to have the pause and we were beginning to look at regulation, there would be a flood of applications to get in under the regulation deadline. And so that would really defeat the purpose. That would, by having regulations done that way, it would really be an incentive for people to get applications in for the development of warehouses.
And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe under the current zoning, with warehouse being permitted as of right, there is not additional CEQA analysis or review or discretion on the part of people, correct? So there's not an opportunity to analyze or mitigate potential impacts under the existing zoning.
Yes, that
which
is
what
correct.
Staff would studying.
That is correct. So we would have no way of mitigating impacts. We have no discretion over the location of warehouses, where our hands are really tied by the way the code is. And I believe one of the people on Zoom who was making a comment had mentioned that warehouses are allowed by right. Yes, that's 100% accurate. They are by right. So there's no discretion on the part of staff or on the part of city council as to allowing warehouses to be constructed here.
Are there any additional comments from the
So-
city council?
I'd like to just say one last thing. So Councilmember Lario, so if we do pause and we put a 45-day pause, it gives us an opportunity to work with the community to come to some sort of an agreement or solution so that we can bring it forward to city council within the next 45 days. But if the moratorium is voted no by city council, then it would allow others to come in and submit their plans or site plans for warehousing. This does not affect manufacturing in Vernon, but it would allow them to submit those plans. And then if we do take action after the 45 days, those plans would be considered. So again, we will work with the members of the community to come with a solution back to city council. We will work diligently over the next 45 days so that we can present something to city council as soon as possible.
Are there any further public comments or any raised hands on Zoom?
Just a second. Mayor, are you reopening the public comment portion? Or are you looking for new speakers?
I would like to open the public comments.
So this will allow people who have already addressed the council an additional 3 minutes to address the council?
I would like to hear what they have to say, yes.
Okay. You want to come to the microphone? So we have some people in the audience and we also have raised hands on Zoom. If you could please state your name and business affiliation and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, Steve Freed. I'm the current chairman of the board for the Vernon Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a property owner and warehouse owner. What's being misrepresented here is that they are putting a moratorium on my ability to lease my building. For example, there is a brand new building going in. I'm not associated with it on 26th Street. They have an approved set of plans, but the city's moratorium is not going to let them lease that building to any tenant in excess of 3 years. What is the purpose for that? And what tenant wants to sign and improve a warehouse building for a 3-year lease with no guarantees that they'll be able to continue leasing? They won't be able to get an option. My tenants, it'll be the same thing. This part needs to be stricken from this moratorium. We have to allow current accepted permitted warehouse uses to continue to lease their properties. This moratorium is nothing about tearing down buildings like mine. So let me lease it. Let me continue to be prosperous while you go after potential new development in the city. Thank you.
Dan, would you like to comment on that? No, I want to address it. So I don't want to hear. I want to address it right now so that we can move on from this.
Yes, so the 3-year lease prohibition in the moratorium could be removed from the moratorium. It was originally placed there in contemplation of there being some very restrictive regulation that might extend beyond that 3-year period. So just to put the community's minds at ease and to show a collaborative effort on the part of city staff, we'd be willing to ask the council to remove the 3-year lease portion of the moratorium.
And that would be for current warehouse use, right?
We could just strike it, the 3-year lease from all, from the ordinance in its entirety.
Okay.
So Mayor, we'll put it up on the screen, and if adopted, then with the recommendation for the city council, we can strike that.
On the resolution is section 5.
Section 5.
Okay. Do we have any additional comments?
We're going to bring it up, Mayor, we're going to bring it up on the screen.
Oh,
Then
okay.
I'll share the screen on Zoom shortly.
Yeah, so number 3, we could just strike, provided that the term does not exceed 3 years, we could just strike that. And so any new or renewed lease agreement would be exempted regardless of the duration.
So to clarify, that's section 5B exemptions, number 3.
Yeah. And we strike all language after the word agreement.
So we're leaving any new or renewed lease agreement,
Yes.
striking provided that the term does not exceed 3 years. And yes, Mayor, we do have additional speakers if you'd
Okay.
like to continue.
Yes.
Thank you and good morning, Mayor and City Council. My name is John Peterson. I'm with a developer who owns a property here in Vernon, and we have one under contract. And with all due respect, I think one thing that's not being discussed here is the unintended consequences of a moratorium, even if in the highly unlikely event it can be solved within 45 days, all due respect to the hardworking people here and the community involvement you've talked about. The unintended consequences are far reaching. It's essentially a stop, a pause on business throughout in terms of construction, in terms of moving this city forward. And the black eye that will accompany this moratorium in the business community will be far reaching. And I don't know that that's really being thought about. 45-day pause, okay, sounds nice. It's not that. All of a sudden, Vernon is viewed by the business community with the black eye in terms of being pro-business and moving things forward. And I would respectfully ask the council to think about these unintended consequences from capital investors to construction workers to people that are considering business here, business owners here, we just heard. So I'd ask the council to consider that. And those have not been discussed in much detail at all here this morning. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. And Madam Mayor, thank you for reopening the public comment period. Very much appreciated. I was up on the podium. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, my name is Clark Newhoff, and I represent a Layer Property Group. I was on the podium earlier today describing a situation, perhaps a unique situation, but one that might be germane to others in the room. So I wanted to ask the question. This revolves around the what constitutes pending approval. In our unique situation, we've invested a lot of money in researching and doing due diligence on a property. We have some significant money invested in the property, a few $1 million, but not enough to purchase the property, which is pending at a number into the 20s of millions of dollars. We have submitted a site plan to Sergio and staff. We received full comments from all departments. But we have not closed on the property, and we intend to do so within the next week or so. You could probably have me breathe a little easier if the answer is what constitutes a site plan. A pending site plan is submittal to staff and full review, which we've had, but I've not yet had the opportunity to submit the construction drawings because we don't yet own the property. So for the benefit of my situation, for those who might be in a similar situation, heavily invested in a property, what please, if you may, constitutes a pending approval? Thank you.
Mayor, if you allow, staff will answer that.
Yes.
So a pending approval would be an approval that's it'd be a submittal that had been a substantial submittal that is substantially accurate, not a lot of need for corrections. And that would be a pending approval. So it would be an approval that's pending a very limited scope of corrections to be made to, in this example, a site plan.
So just to follow up on that, what he's asking is, would his construction plan be covered?
I would have to take a look at his individual plan in order to address that. I know he's made a submittal. I'm not sure how far along he is in the approval process to be able to answer if that's pending or not pending for an approval. I wish I could provide a better answer, but not having that in front of me, I really can't intelligently speak to that.
Okay. I'm kind of stumped on that answer because I'm not understanding the
Oh,
process.
So the process is, for example,
Well,
example.
let me back up a little bit. With this moratorium in place,
Mhm.
he's already put his site plan in place. You
Right.
guys are in the process of it. But the next step is construction planning.
Since-
Is that part of the whole process?
Yes, that is part of
So
it.
wherever
So
it's at, whether
that-
he has corrections, no corrections, he's covered that if he will not be, I just want to understand
Yes,
this.
yes. So that project would move forward because submittals had
It would
been
not be
made.
covered under the 45 moratorium,
It
45 day
would not be
moratorium.
affected by the
Okay.
moratorium.
As long as something has been initiated, then it will be moved forward, right? That's my understanding.
Yes, under exemption 4, if it's a pending permit or if they've already received full approvals, commenced construction, that kind of thing, there's a bunch of exemptions within 4, the project continues to move forward.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Follow up on that, would it be possible?
Please state your name.
Sorry, Heather Crossner from Bridge Industrial. Just following up on that discussion, I think that everyone's in agreement. Is it possible to just add that language to the exemptions saying, because it's not clear what's covered as a pending permit. So submittal of site plan review would be considered a pending permit.
Sorry, I think we're all stumped here.
Any other comments?
What's-
Any other comments?
Okay, great. Thank you. I know, I appreciate it. I think we're all in alignment. Just want to make sure that was written down. Thank you.
What part would that be? Just- I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry.
It's exemption number 4 under section 5.
On page 6.
Page 6.
So number the establishment, expansion, or modification of any warehouse related with pending permits.
Because it states on their full approvals, right? So, or pending permits. So is there something that we can add on there that if they've initiated any type of permit, it will move forward?
Let's see.
You could just say with pending permits, parentheses, which includes submittal of a site plan for review, end parentheses.
Yeah. Pretty narrow, but I don't know if Dan, if staff has any recommendations on how to better define pending.
It's not exclusive. It's just including, but not, not exhaustive.
That would be permits that we've received application for. And in the case of site plans, it could, I think that we could parenthetically add, including submitted site plans.
Thank you.
Okay,
We do have some raised hands, Mayor.
Okay.
Just getting them queued up.
We have some raised hands. We'll start with Jack Klein. Please go ahead and unmute your mic. Jack, please unmute your mic.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. A specific question is, though, a use that requires discretion, something that is required to have a CUP submitted, is that under the moratorium, in that the moratorium is for those items that do not have discretion, like the by right warehouse?
I'm sorry, can you restate your question?
Sure, that was a bad way. If the use requires a CUP, anyhow, can we submit the CUP application during this moratorium period and receive comments and proceed to get a conditional use permit?
Warehouses don't require a CUP.
This is a logistics use.
Oh,
Is it-
logistics use. No, I think that would be part of the 45-day pause if CUP has not been submitted yet.
Danny's asking, can he submit a CUP for consideration?
Yes, you could submit a CUP.
Okay, so we submit the CUP, pay the $20,000, and we wait the 45 days before we get any comments back?
Yes, yeah, the way, yes, that would be the case. Since we don't know what future regulation is going to be for logistics uses, we couldn't make a rational comment on the CUP that we had received during the 45-day pause.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Douglas Williams. Please unmute your mic.
Yes, thank you again, council, mayor, and staff. I've been listening intently to one of the greatest city council meetings I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. We are all watching civic sausage being made live, online, and in person. It is fantastic. I would say to those in attendance and those listening that this project can be handled, if it is the emergency that it is, well inside of 15 days. A 45-day window in the capital markets is enormous. There are a lot of companies and a lot of investors who are looking at this and they're saying, my plan B is going to be over if I can't get Vernon to understand what it is that I'm doing, and 45 days is too long. I have option B that I got to take care of, and I'm going to have to jump on it because I can't wait 45 days. So says those investors, not me, but so says many of the investors. I would submit to the council that in this sausage making session that we are in, to limit a 15-day period of time for the staff to get with the BIC who are engaged in this on a regular basis and hold a meeting, get it together so that we can understand what it is. And I can guarantee you in 15 days, this thing can get worked out. A 45-day window is way too long. W-A-Y, way too long. Those are my comments. And I would advise the city council to have this amended to a 15-day window, period. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Anna Andrioli. Please unmute your microphone.
Hi, I'm Anna Andrioli and I'm with Baker Commodities. We've been in the area for a very long time. Thank you for holding this meeting and allowing us to attend over Zoom. My question is, what about the expansion of current warehousing that's already there? I just got sent this actually from my grandfather and I'm tuning in a little late. And hello?
Yes.
Hi,
We're
can you guys
listening.
hear me? Okay, sorry. Did you hear what I just said?
We did.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my questions. What about the expansion? If we've already submitted plans in the past, what happens there
For what type of business?
for warehousing, cold storage specifically?
If the plans have already been submitted, then that would be pending a permit and that would be an exemption to the moratorium.
Okay, but if they've not been approved, then there's no expansions of current warehousing or cold storage.
If they have been,
It's blocked.
if they have been submitted, then they are pending the permit. And so they would be exempted under the moratorium. They'd be exempted from the moratorium.
Okay. But if not, then if we've held off on moving forward with it for a short period of time and we didn't move forward on that, then we're out of luck.
If there are no pending permits, then whatever project had been contemplated would be subject to the 45-day moratorium.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There are no further raised hands.
Okay, I would like to close the public comment. And may I have a motion for this item with removing the items that we discussed? So the 3 years
Removing and then adding, no?
and then adding.
Just to clarify, Mayor,
The
sorry.
site
I'm gonna
approval?
jump in. Just to
Okay.
clarify the motion, we're gonna remove the 3-year lease moratorium, section 5B, parenthesis 3. We're removing that language. And then you're gonna add some language to the submitted site plan part of it. I didn't.
If
mark
I could
down.
help you, council member?
Yes, I just want to understand what we're motioning.
So the comments were to strike, provided that the term does not exceed 3 years from section 5B3, and to add a parenthetical in section 4, following pending permits, parenthesis, which includes submittal of a site plan for review, and parenthesis, or that have already received full approvals. The rest would remain the same.
Section 4, what line? Sorry.
Section 4 would read the establishment, expansion, or modification of any warehouse or related facilities with pending permits, parenthesis, which includes submittal of a site plan for review, end parenthesis, or that have already received full approvals and commenced construction or incurred expenses for construction prior to this ordinance.
Okay.
Dominic, if you could put up the ordinance again, that might be helpful. So section 3 shown here towards the bottom, we would strike after agreement. And then section 4 and the second line, facilities with pending permits, parentheses, which includes submittal of a site plan for review, and parentheses. Or that have already been, or that have already received full approvals. That all continues to remain. Did I get that right, Dan?
Yes.
Oh, Just to clarify on the suggestion or recommendation to shorten the time period, if we're adopting this under 65858, the statute provides that it is valid for 45 days from the date of adoption. So we really don't have that wiggle room to shorten it since we're adopting it pursuant to the government code. Council would certainly, be free to give direction to call a BIC meeting within that 15-day period or something similar. But in terms of the effective date of the urgency ordinance, it's dictated by statute.
Can I ask a question? If a resolution happens before the 45 days, can we lift the moratorium with a meeting?
I believe so.
I just wanted to clarify that if we're changing the zoning code, we would be required to have a noticed public hearing. So any resolution that changes the zoning code requires a notice public hearing, which is why the 45-day
Correct.
timeframe is provided, because we have a 10-day or 2-week noticing period for the changes to the zoning code. And then we have the publishing of the newspaper only on Thursdays. So we have that, we have to get it to them by Monday. That's why the 45 days is set by state statute that way.
And the statute also requires the report be prepared by staff and presented to council no less than 10 days prior to the expiration. So I think that coincides with the public notice hearing. So at the same time, we would notice any proposed zoning amendments, staff would also have to prepare a report. So I think that's why the timing kind of works out that way.
Thank you for the clarification about the 45 days. So may I have a motion for item number 28?
I'll move item 28 with the 2 changes requested.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Mayor Lopez, to find the action exempt under CEQA and adopt interim urgency ordinance number 1283, establishing a 45-day a temporary moratorium on the establishment, expansion, or modification of warehouse uses, freight terminals, truck terminals, container storage, and container parking in the city of Vernon, with the section 5B3 amended and section 5B4 amended as indicated. I'll call the roll. Mayor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Larios,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Can I just make one quick comment before we move on?
Yes, go
I want
ahead.
to thank the community for coming out and talking about this. I want to thank staff and thank everybody. But to me, today's item just shows how much the city has progressed and moved forward, because in the past you wouldn't have been able to have this type of conversation. We're going on now to 12:30. And in the past, you were never able to have this type of conversation. So I thank you very much for your public comment. I thank council for listening, and I thank staff for working with all of us on a partnership. This shows you how much the city has moved forward and progressed over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ibarra. We'll go on to item number 29, is a professional services agreement with Tyler Technologies for citywide enterprise resource planning software as a service, housing and support. Finance Director Williams will present the staff report.
Just give it a minute. Just giving it a minute. I guess it doesn't matter. Okay. Yes, good morning, honorable, or good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and members of City Council. The item being presented this afternoon is an update to existing citywide professional services agreement, which is actually a correction to the staff report that was submitted at that time. So just to note here, there is a correction to the language regarding the recurring annual fees and the total not to exceed, but there is no budget adjustment. There's no appropriation being requested, and there is no change to the existing agreement with Tyler Technologies. This is just an update to the staff report. And that concludes my report.
Does council have any questions of staff for item number 29?
I'm gonna feel dumb here, but can you
No.
repeat it with all the noise in the background?
Sure.
I didn't understand. Is an amendment, you're doing an amendment to this?
It is what this is it's not amending the agreement. It is a correction to a previous staff report. So we, for full transparency, we always want the staff report to very accurately reflect the language of the agreement. What's being brought forward is not an amendment or change the existing agreement. There's not a budget adjustment and there's no further appropriation. It is just the language being updated regarding that specific item of the recurring annual fees in the out years that have not occurred yet.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any public comments for item number 29? Or any raised hand buttons on Zoom?
There is one raised hand on Zoom. I want to clarify, see if this is to address any of the previous items or what was just discussed. It's from Thomas
Okay.
Condon. Thomas Condon.
Tom Condon, did you want to address the council on item number 29, or is that a leftover raised hand?
Please unmute your microphone, Tom. We'll move on.
Okay, seeing that there are no public comments, may I have a motion for item number 29?
I'll move Ibarra.
Is there a second?
Motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Councilmember Davis, to authorize additional funds in the amount of $729,926 to contract IT 0152 with Tyler Technologies. Mayor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Larios,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We will now go on to oral reports. City Administrator Fandino, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. I'll keep it really short. COVID-19 testing and medication available for symptomatic cases. Please be reminded that the free drive-through COVID-19 testing continues to be available at Vernon City Hall and are provided Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. with no appointment necessary. This Thursday is the Vernon's Job Fair. It's scheduled for 9 a.m. through 1 p.m. So far, we have over 30 employers that have reserved tables. Close to 300 jobs will be available. There's a bell in city admin that you can see when someone gets a job, we're going to ring the bell. We have positions from warehousing, machine operators, merchandisers, packers, accounting, maintenance, mechanics, etc. So lots of stuff there. Southern California Curling Center event, Hollywood Curling is having its 12th annual Blockbuster tournament on July 1st through the 3rd. The tournament will be the first one in Southern California Curling Center here in Vernon and will feature 36 teams coming to the city from all over the United States and Canada. The group is extending an invitation to the mayor and the city council to join the tournament. Opening ceremonies on July 1st at 3:30 p.m. If you're interested, please contact city admin. Vernon Housing Commission special meeting reminder. We will have it on Wednesday, June 29th to hold a lottery available city-owned housing. Additional information will be found on the city website. And then we'll have that meeting at night, scheduled at night. Also, capital project deferment. So I just want to advise city council, due to the recent events with Farmer John and Raywork Pacific, I am putting a moratorium, no pun intended, on capital projects. And we will be holding off on some of the street paving monies that we've been allocated. Also, some of the other capital projects that we have ongoing here at the city hall, which was some renovations that we were going to do to the building and also adding a new gas pump. I will also be working with VPU. I know that we do have some capital projects that need to go on due to the companies that we have been in contact with, and also the water infrastructure upgrades that will continue. But I will monitor the capital expenditures on the utility side. Going back to the general fund, the paving project, we will identify items in the streets that need to be addressed, and we will address those as quickly as possible. So if we find, or if anybody sees issues out in the streets, please contact city admin, and I will work with Public Works to get those um, completed. Also, just be aware the city council may reach out to me via text or call me or email me if there's any issues with graffiti. We do have additional support with Public Works for the time being to clean up some of the city sidewalks, streets, signs, etc. So if you see graffiti, please reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to come out. And we have power washing companies that we've contracted with to clean up those locations as quick as possible and subsidize some of the lack of labor force that we have in the Public Works side. The deferment of the capital projects of for this year will result in close to about $5 million in reduction in capital expenditures. With that, I have nothing further.
Does the council have any reports? No? Okay, we will now go on to closed session for agenda item numbers 30 through 34.